Hello, Internet. Welcome to NBC Sports HQ, Studio 3 here. My name is Josh Norris here for the Rotoworld Live NFL Fantasy Draft. I, however, cannot conduct this full PPR 16-round draft by myself. That's why I have these gentlemen beside me. Let's first start with Patrick Doherty, who's at the end of the table, the daddest man on the planet. Pat, how are you?
I'm good, yeah. I'm missing my daughter's first day of pre-K, so I hope you're all happy.
I apologize.
Yeah, so now I'm the worst dad in the world.
To his right is Mr. John Daigle. John, how are you?
Great. My whole life has been one long con to win a wrestling title, and here we are, finally.
We'll get to the belts in a moment. Scott Pianowski is to my right. Scott, good to see you.
Thrilled to be here and happy to be hosting this league on Yahoo Sports.
And via satellite,
Shameless plug.
Mr. Andy Behrens of Yahoo as well. Andy, good to see you.
I'm sorry I can't be there with you. As I understand it, Pat refused to participate if I was actually there live in the room. It's fine. I get it.
I refused to, even if it was satellite, they sprung it on me at the last minute, so I couldn't get up and leave. But too much professional for that.
We are not alone, along with Andy via satellite. We also have this side desk over in this corner, a little timeout with Matt Straub and Chris Sims. Hello over there.
Hey,
Thank
what's
you,
up, guys. Yeah, Chris, is Pat Doherty already complaining about being here?
I mean, I don't know. It sounds like we're the losers at table 9 right now. They just were like, hey, those guys in the corner, we'll let them talk every now and then. Thanks for having us, though. This will be fun.
These guys will be able to throw jabs at us in between every single round. I do want to hit on the lineup rules and the scoring rules of, again, this 16-round draft. The lineup is quite simple. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and flex that can be a running back, wide receiver, or tight end, kicker defense, and we'll close it out with 6 bench spots. And scoring, once again, at the top, I mentioned that it is a PPR draft. 4 passing points, or 4 points for a touchdown, I should say. And we get those 10 yards per 10, 1 point per 10 yards and rushing, and then also 1 point per reception, which is crucial for this draft. I do want to go through the draft order at this time, and that, again, starts with Patrick Doherty, the lucky
Very
101
suspicious.
at the top. Then we have Eric at number 2, Matt at number 3. Again, these are all great readers and subscribers of the Draft Guide in the season pass. 4 is Ryan, Andy Behrens, again via satellite at 5, Scott Davey at 6, 7 is Kyle, 8 John, Junior at 9, Michael at 10, Eugene at 11, and then the great Scott Pianowski will give us at the turn at number 12 and take it back around. I do want to also add that this is a different draft than we had last year, guys. It's actually going to be played out to all the enjoyment of everyone up here. But there are some stakes here as well, because the winner will get either the trophy or the belt. Take that home with them. So that would look good on you.
Yeah, I think it would fit me, yeah.
But also the loser of the experts, including Andy Behrens, one of them will be relegated.
So it's going to be sad when Andy's not with us next year, but I'm glad that we have him this year.
Hey, look, my favorite Premier League team is Arsenal. Yeah, watch them on NBC Sports all the time, and they've never been relegated. I've never been relegated.
Well, as an Aston Villa supporter, I can tell you it's not a fun thing for your team to be relegated.
It's on you to remind me about waiver pickup, Scott. It's on you. Just text me.
And again, this is the Rotoworld Live Draft, so I should probably promote Rotoworld for around-the-clock NFL news, rumors, injury reports, depth charts, and changes, analysis, and more. Be sure to go to rotoworld.com. Guys, we have a minute and a half before the draft kicks off. We know that Pat has the 101, so to the rest of you, maybe I'll start with Scott here. Who would your pick at the 101 be to maybe influence Pat here with that first selection?
Immediately subtweet my pick.
Yeah, we know you're going probably with a running back. Christian McCaffrey, for me, I'm not worried about the size so much because he's used so exclusively, regularly as a receiver. I think that avoids durability concerns. And last year they said they were going to use him, run him into the ground and pass him into the ground. They did that. I think with the age, career arc, I think he's the safest number 1 pick, but I know Pat's probably got 4 or 5 guys he could consider.
And it's quite a difference because last year Christian McCaffrey was going in the 2nd round of mini drafts, and this year he's
League
in
winner,
the running to be the 101. There are about 3 or 4 other names, John. Do you have one that you might take at 101?
Well, since it's Pat picking, obviously Adam Vinatieri. Of course. No. Oddly enough, I think it comes down to either Christian McCaffrey or Barkley. I'm not sure what Pat's going to do here. Just to be the opposition to what Scott said, Barkley, we're looking at the same number of targets, really. The question is, how good will the Giants' offense be? Because right now, we can project Barkley for, probably double-digit targets, if not quite under that per game. It's just really a matter of what offense you think will be better. I would personally go McCaffrey, but Barkley is still an easy choice for number 1 as well.
Yeah, when you're drafting that running back, you're really getting married to the whole offense, right?
Yes.
So if you don't feel great about the Giants' offense, maybe it makes sense to take an Elliott or McCaffrey or Kamara.
He could literally have 20 targets for 9 yards every game, like every single game.
The PPR scoring, you'll get a point for every one of those catches.
Well, let's now turn it over to Roto Pat because the draft has started, ladies and gentlemen. Pat, take us through what's going on in that mind of yours with his first selection.
Yeah, well, I was just going to take a quarterback because that's what
Of course.
people do. No, I'm going to go Christian McCaffrey.
Interesting.
Christian McCaffrey basically lab created for a PPR back, and so third down backs, are kind of a life hack. Obviously, running backs who catch passes are a life hack in PPR. We have a third down back who is an every down back in Christian McCaffrey. He played the most running back snaps of any running back last year since 2014. Matt Forte only came off the field for 20 snaps all year before Week 17. Literally set the receptions record for a running back. Another thing, McCaffrey still has room to grow in the carries department.
Yep.
And Norv Turner's always kind of been a one-back coach. The situation basically could not be better for Christian McCaffrey in a PPR league, and I think it's a no-brainer, number 1.
And Andy, this team, the Panthers, have talked about, lessening the amount of snaps that Christian McCaffrey has played, but until they actually do it, I absolutely do not believe Ron Rivera and Norv Turner can do that.
Yeah, I'm certainly right there with you. There's no one behind him that anyone should fear, right?
Right.
So that would make all the difference. I mean, I do think there's a possibility that we see Cam Newton return to being the Panthers' goal line back, but that's really the only worry.
Yeah, the coach speak with regards to scaling back McCaffrey's workload over the offseason. There was a little coach speak, but it was very weak. Like, they were not committed to the bit at all. And yeah, I mean, was Jordan Scarlett really going to be vulturing Christian McCaffrey? Andy's right. Cam Newton could maybe be vulturing Christian McCaffrey, but he's on the field for every play.
So I would almost feel like with coach speak, if you were to listen to none of it versus all of it, you might be better off listening to none.
Correct. Yes.
Eric at number 2, you can see at this beautiful board behind us, the full draft as it goes on. Eric took Saquon Barkley at number 2, Alvin Kamara there at number 3. We have Ryan taking David Johnson ahead of Ezekiel Elliott, which turns us again to Andy Behrens here at pick number 5.
Yeah, I'm going first receiver off the board here. It was either going to be David Johnson or it was going to be DeAndre Hopkins for me. I just think your upside with Hopkins, probably going to catch something close to 110 passes this year. Should be good for 1,400 to 1,500 yards. It's an explosive offense. He's the unrivaled number 1 to me at the receiver position. Again, I would have been interested in David Johnson. Clearly, if Zeke Elliott, if I could feel good about him playing Week 1, he would have been the pick here. But for me, I see no risk to DeAndre.
Yeah, Andy, let me follow up on that because, 3 weeks ago, Ezekiel Elliott, to me, would have been in conversation for that first pick overall. And now, just because he hasn't shown up to training camp, there is no contract in place, there are rumors he might not be there for Week 1. The little Le'Veon Bell situation from last year is probably a cloud that's hanging over your head here at pick number 5.
Yeah, I will say this can't go the way that the Le'Veon Bell thing did, right?
Sure.
Because he's just not in the same contract timeline, contract situation. He's got to play this year. So it's a question of how many games he misses, if he's going to decide to miss games at all. Obviously, Dallas has a lot of contract work to do. You'd think they would take care of the guys who are actually in camp before they take care of Zeke. So I am pretty concerned about the first couple weeks of the season.
All right, at pick number 6, Scott Davey selected Devontae Adams, the second receiver. And then at 7, Kyle Smith with Le'Veon Bell. That means at pick number 8, John Daigle is on the clock.
We discussed this at the hotel last night. I was asking, what happens if Zeke falls to 8? That's the curveball here. And they agreed Zeke wouldn't fall to 8. And here we are now, Zeke falls to 8. If it was 2 weeks later, I would say I would avoid this pick. But right now, I think it's still valuable with 3 weeks until the season. So, unfortunately, I have to make this. I'm sorry.
Andy was right with the breakdown of Zeke. I mean, he's under contract for 2 more years. It's not a matter of if he could. There's a risk he will miss games, but he will play in 2019. So it could just be an Aaron Donald situation. Maybe he skips 1 game, just like send a shot across the bow. If it's going to be a holdout, it'll be short. You still don't want your first-round pick to hold out for any amount of games.
I feel like there's some acrimony with the Bell and the Steelers that I don't feel is there with Elliott and the Cowboys. If I could get Zeke at any draft right now, the 8th pick, I'd be all over it. I think it's a great selection, great value. And as Josh said, he could have been the number 1 pick 2 weeks ago.
And the Cowboys are currently hiding Jerry Jones's phone. He wants to give Zeke what he wants so badly. So it's
and even from just a raw rushing touchdown standpoint, I believe he had 15 his first season in 16 games, 7 last season in 10 games, or 2 seasons ago, and then 6 last season in 16 games.
I am concerned about his passing game work with Randall Cobb and Jason Witten.
77 receptions last year?
Yeah, career high routes run per game and targets. Like, he was finally using the passing game efficiently. But even so, he's still obviously like a top 5 back. So.
Well, Junior selected at number 9, Julio Jones. Then at 10, Michael Thomas from Michael Epstein. We're still waiting for Eugene and Alma here at pick number 11. Scott Pianowski, are you deciding between 2 or 3 players here coming up on the turn at number 12?
Yeah, the 12 pick, if you don't take at least one running back at 12, you're really going to have to be Kreskin later in the draft. You're going to have to nail some of those lottery tickets. So I think I'm going to have to take at least one running back. I'm looking at maybe 2 of them. James Conner makes a lot of sense. Can Nick Chubb really establish that job while Hunt's out? And then maybe 2 months into the season, Hunt is just a bit player. I think I'm going to take at least one running back and maybe 2.
Well, you are on the clock, so take us through that pick, if you will.
You know, I'm going to go with Chubb. I'm going to drink some of the Cleveland Kool-Aid. The team on the rise. Obviously, they got rid of Hugh Jackson. The offense took off in the second half. I think Chubb has a little bit more receiving upside than he's getting credit for. And I'm not worried about Hunt. I think Nick Chubb could be leading the NFL in rushing by the time Hunt comes back. So maybe I've been listening to a lot of your stuff and it seeped into my head. Nick Chubb, get the jersey, print it up. He's on my team.
I mean, I totally agree with you, though, because Kareem Hunt is a super talented player, but he's not coming back until week 10, so we might have Nick Chubb be a 1,000-yard receiver. Let's take it over to the side desk again. Matt Straub and Chris Sims. Tell us what we did wrong over here in the first 12 picks, guys.
Well, Chris, I think it's very possible that Daigle either just won the league or ruined his team with that Zeke pick. But
interesting.
I want to ask you about David Johnson. I mean, the Cardinals' offense was sort of historically awful last year. What are your expectations for him in the new look attack?
It's unknown. I mean, I think you can't overstate the fact that, hey, David Johnson, when healthy prior to last year and everything like that, he's one of the top 5 most talented running backs in the game. Can do it all. Run between the tackles, awesome in the pass game. But the big question is what you said. Or is the Cliff Kingsbury offense.
Right.
It's not famous at Texas Tech for running the football. And 2, I do worry about, does the NFL catch on to it? Does he have enough inventory of offense year 1 in the NFL with defenses and smart minds, no 20-hour college rule breaking down his defense, all those things. So he'll be a big part of the offense. I just wonder how successful the offense will be in general.
Yeah, it's almost like, are we giving it too much credit before it even arrives in the league?
I'd like to see it to believe it before. I like David Johnson, but that's one that just jumped out to me.
Thanks, guys. I think it's super cute, by the way, you guys called each other last night and wore matching outfits.
Yeah, that's what we do. That's
you got
what
to do the top
teammates
button,
do.
though. You got to do the top button.
Scott did make the selection of the first pick of the second round. Scott, who'd you go with?
Yeah, James Conner. I'm going to go strong RB here. I know the Steelers are talking about scaling back his workload, but I mean, Benny Snell, I think he's just a bit player. Samuel's more of a receiver and kind of a hybrid player. I think when push comes to shove, Conner has one of the safest volume floors, and that's a huge part of fantasy football. There aren't that many bell cows, maybe 7 or 8. He's one of them. I've got 2 of them. I feel great about my start.
And it is another one of the situations where there is talk of splitting the backfield up, and even some from James Conner. But if you look historically for the Steelers, they have never done that.
Never.
Even when Le'Veon Bell, was spelled by D'Angelo Williams because of suspensions, it was always a one-back offense, and I think we can kind of bank on that again in 2019.
Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. When they get punched in the mouth in week 1 or week 2, I think they'll realize Conner needs to touch it 20 times a week.
We were followed this up with the second pick of the second round with Eugene and Alma with Juju Smith-Schuster. Guys, I mean, this Steelers offense is going to look quite different, isn't it? And Juju was someone that in the slot could operate at a high level without Antonio Brown. But Pat, don't you think that Juju has a chance of leading the league in targets and receptions possibly this year?
He do, and he'll be moved all over the field. He's a special athletic talent too. He's ready. He great grooming for the role. I mean, he's kind of got eased into this alpha role, and always this monster season as the number 2 last year. And I just think he's ready to kind of graduate to this role and can be used any way the Steelers want him to be. And he's ready to be a target hog. He's ready to play over the field. And I love Juju Smith. In the second round, Juju Smith-Schuster into PPR is a great get to me.
Michael took Odell Beckham, then Junior selected Joe Mixon in potentially an awful offense. That means John Daigle is up once again. John, take us through your
John Daigle's up for a curveball, too.
Oh, gosh.
So ideally, I was looking at Joe Mixon, especially getting a workhorse in the second round. But now, with the options on the board, to me, it's either Tyreek Hill or the person I'm going, George Kittle. because ideally I would like to have a chance at winning the one position, the tight end position, every single week and drafting one of those premier tight ends. In that case, I don't even have to worry about a backup tight end. I can just play the waiver wire at the end of on his bye week, so it's no big deal. George Kittle, unlike Joe Mixon, George Kittle is actually helped by Dante Pettis perhaps not being in the starting lineup once the season goes around. So George Kittle's only raised his value right now.
You aren't the only George Kittle fanboy on this set. Andy Behrens, I believe, is sporting a George Kittle T-shirt.
Troll pick all the way.
I'm just reeling. I can't believe that happened. Like, you wear the shirt of the player. I feel like that stakes out a position. I fully intended to get Kittle here. Obviously, I agree with everything that was said.
And you didn't go over the contract
positional
enough.
Advantage.
You didn't look over your contract, and the fine print,
Apparently.
it did not guarantee you the pick. So,
Of course, without Nick Mullins, at quarterback, maybe Kittle won't be the same player.
Let's turn it back
Exactly.
to Andy Behrens, because after John Daigle, Tyreek Hill went to Kyle. Then from Scott Davey, we had Mike Evans. So Andy, you are back on the clock.
Oh man, so that was the trio I was looking at, right? It was Kittle, it was Hill,
Sniped.
it was Evans. I miss out on all of them. I miss out on absolutely all of them. I'm not taking Ertz here. I mean, I even dressed to draft George Kittle. That is really crushing. I'm going Dalvin Cook here. Again, this kind of the cost of taking a wide receiver in the first round is you pretty much have to come back with a running back either in round 2, round 3. I like some of the potential workhorse backs here. Obviously, we still need to see Dalvin Cook put together a full season, but I think he's well situated in a great offense. I think he's going to be a 3-down guy. I just need 14 or 15 games out of him, and I think I've got an RB1.
Andy, we literally saw the Vikings offensive coordinator last season be fired because he did not run the football enough. So selecting the running back of the Vikings might be a solid draft choice here.
Right. I mean, they wanted to unplug that offense. They switched coordinators. They brought in Gary Kubiak, a rushing guru, and 2 years removed from the ACL. It's a really great time to get in on Cook. I thought he was justifiable with my first pick in this round. I think Andy got a very good value here.
There are a few other names that went off the board here. Antonio Brown just went off the board to, I believe,
I was going to take
Ryan.
Anybody worried about Brown? I mean,
Absolutely.
it's a new story every day. That's why you go to Rotoworld, right? Because it's a new Antonio Brown blurb about every 8 hours. You guys probably have an Antonio Brown shift.
Antonio Brown is paying the bills right now.
Right, yeah.
I'll tell you that.
There's a Brown shift at Rotoworld now. Somebody just covers him. But
Because in some ways you kind of have to throw out all of his production in the past. And he's playing for an offense that could not support Amari Cooper last season. And now they're expected to support Antonio Brown.
And Ben Roethlisberger to Derek Carr might be a downgrade as well. And we see receivers changing teams, a lot of times acclimation. And he's not even in camp right now. I mean, how many reps does he need to get comfortable?
Let's close out the second round here with Patrick Doherty after Antonio Brown went to Ryan. Matt selected Todd Gurley. T.Y. Hilton went to Eric. And then Pat, take us home.
the top two players in my queue were T.Y. Hilton and Antonio Brown. So a little crestfallen. I'm just probably not going to make this pick out of sadness. Antonio Brown, the circus element is real, but he's one of the greatest PPR players in NFL history. The Raiders, offense last year were led in receptions by a tight end and a running back, tied for the team lead in receptions. The Raiders need these targets. They need these receptions. John Gruden's going to prove this trade was the right decision, that he was smart to go get Antonio Brown.
Well, who are you taking?
I'm going to take Aaron Jones. That's
Okay.
who I'm going to take.
Can you tell us
I did
why?
not want to double up on running back, but I just think Aaron Jones is a special player. Once they finally committed to him, he led the league in yards per carry, which is, a kind of a fickle stat. But a freak athlete, he could have a much bigger role in the passing game. He's going to probably play all three downs. And I think he's one of those players that's primed. He's like a prime eruption candidate to me this year. And just with the whole bounce back, hopefully, of the Packers offense, I think Aaron Jones in a great spot to be a league winner.
Let's get some analysis from Matt and Chris over the side desk.
Chris, Antonio Brown is basically a hot air balloon filled with red flags. You got the feet, you got the helmet issue. He's back now.
Right.
What do you think realistically? I mean, is it possible people are panicking on him and he could outperform all of our expectations?
Well, we'd like to know the issue with the feet, but I do expect that to heal up. I played for John Gruden. I think I played for him longer than any other quarterback has dealt with him, okay? He's going to get Antonio Brown the ball. That's his new toy. He's going to be obsessed with him. Just about 8 out of every 10 pass plays he calls, Antonio Brown's going to be the guy who's going to be the first read, who the play is designed to go to. So I would be shocked if he doesn't go off on stats this year. At least towards the top of the league in receptions, for sure. I'll say that much.
Quickly, Todd Gurley, another terrifying pick. Do you think it's possible all of this preseason smoke is going to go away?
Well, I do. I still think Todd Gurley is going to be really a phenomenal football player. It's just going to be about how much they manage him. He might not get quite as many touches, catches and rushes and everything like that, but I still think you're going to see strong touchdown output and big-time plays in the screen game and the pass game, too, to help that out. So a little risky, but, man, Todd Gurley's still one of the best in the game.
Yeah, 2 massive upside picks there at the end of the second round. Back to you, Josh.
I'll toss it right over to Pat, who just made his selection at the top of round 3.
I can never decide between these Vikings receivers and Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. I have been going.
But they're both
Diggs
good.
pretty much all summer. To me, so I always think of Stephon Diggs as more of the PPR player, just because that's kind of, almost like his body build. It's kind of been like the way he's contributed in fantasy. But Adam Thielen has just as high of a reception floor as Stephon Diggs, and we know he has the higher yardage. We don't know for sure if he has the higher yardage ceiling. To this point in his career, he's been the yardage ceiling player. And they've been talking about kind of changing up Stephon Diggs' role this year, maybe not – like quote space where you read between the lines, maybe won't be as big of a compiler as he was last year. And it's basically a coin flip to me. I wanted this Adam Thielen's safety.
What's funny is that I actually view them opposite. Like, I consider Diggs the electric guy and the higher yardage ceiling, and Thielen more of the – Thielen's awesome, don't get me wrong, but Thielen seems more of the safer floor at this point.
I think Diggs is ultimately the higher yardage ceiling, but Thielen, to this point in his career, has obviously established so maybe I should say the yardage floor.
Well, it's also because they want to keep him healthy. Like, Diggs' health is actual concern every single year.
It feels like Diggs is the lead guitarist and Thielen maybe is the bass player, the more consistent guy. What I ask you is, how do you feel about being married to Kirk Cousins? Because when you take Thielen, you're basically investing in Cousins too.
Hey, Kirk Cousins said he knows, he knows the system this year, but he didn't say he didn't know the system, but more comfortable in the system this year. So no worries with Kirk Cousins.
All right, after Pat, Eric took Keenan Allen, then Amari Cooper went to Matt Martin. Ryan selected Zach Ertz, our third tight end off the board. That means Andy Behrens is up here in the third round.
I'm just going to say, chiming in on the Vikings, that the really nice thing about that offense for fantasy purposes is we know where all the stats will go. It's a super narrow usage tree. We love that in our game. I'm going to take Devontae Freeman here. It was I lost out on Ertz. That was another selection that I'd intended to make if I couldn't get Kittel. I mean, Ertz falling to the third round, coming off a 115 reception season in a full PPR league. That's pretty good. But I'm going to take Devontae Freeman. I don't think he's rivaled by anyone. I think he's basically a sure bet for double-digit touchdowns this season. He is the clear number one. Everything we've heard from Atlanta sounds really promising about him, and he's tied to an offense that could average 30 points a game.
After Andy selected Devontae Freeman, Scott Davey selected Kerryon Johnson, who has now inherited a massive workload. Kyle Smith with Stephon Diggs at the 7th pick of the third round. That means John Daigle is up on the clock.
So, again, I'm in a situation that I think I know what most people would do, probably Damian Williams at this point. And the third round is valuable for Damian Williams. He was coming off the first round the past month, and that was just way too high for my liking. But if you look at John Daigle's rankings in the Rotoworld magazine, he has, I just coincidentally opened the page, he has Leonard Fournette over Damian Williams. And so I'm going to follow that handsome man and draft Leonard Fournette right now.
Wow.
Because Leonard Fournette is an every down back. I know that wasn't the case last year, but in the instances he did become an every down back and play those full games, nearly a 70% snap rate, over 3 targets per game, like 80% of his team's workload. Leonard Fournette is a workhorse. It is a matter of health, and I am not concerned about his health this year, since the injury last year was different than his health history.
Tied to a really strong defense. We like that for our running back, and he's not a zero in the pass game, and they've talked about maybe getting him a little bit more involved. So you might get 45 or 50 catches as well.
For sure. If you want to look more at John Daigle's rankings and everyone else's work over here at Rotoworld.com, projections, strategy, advice on how to dominate your drafts, check out the all-new Rotoworld NFL Draft Guide. Now mobile optimized. You can find it online with a new look and feel. It's never been easier to take our award-winning advice with you to your drafts for that extra competitive edge. Just go to rotoworld.com/draft guide for more.
So I don't want to take your job, but Melvin Gordon just came off the board after me.
Yes.
And I will say I was considering Melvin Gordon. The thing is, I can't have 2 holdout running backs. But the third round is the proper place to
That's the
draft
time
him.
to let your hair down.
Yes.
No offense, John.
Well, I can't do that. Yeah.
Melvin Gordon is a fascinating situation because, I mean, at the top we talked about in round 1 with Ezekiel Elliott. Melvin Gordon, Pat's situation seems a bit more dire than Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, we kind of said that, that animosity isn't really there between the Cowboys and Zeke. It seems to kind of be there with Melvin. Plus, it's a true contract year for Melvin Gordon, and he's shown a lot of solidarity with Le'Veon Bell, and he seems more serious to me about missing time than Ezekiel Elliott.
Scott, are you comfortable with Melvin Gordon round 3?
I am, but as John said, once you have Zeke, I don't think you can double up
can't,
on the holdouts. But I think it's a time where all of us are going to pick guys who are easy to talk down. They're all going to have fleas. Gordon's upside is top 3, top 4 running back.
After John Daigle Jr. again selected Melvin Gordon, then Michael selected Damian Williams, and we are waiting for Eugene and Alma right now. Damian Williams is an interesting one too, because to me, if he finishes up the season as the Chiefs lead back, 200 touches in an offense, possibly the best offense in the NFL, it's a fascinating pick that to me in round 3 can be fantastic.
I think he kind of illustrates how hard the third round is because he's got no floor at all.
Right.
He's almost no time in the NFL, but second half last year in the playoffs, he was terrific in an Andy Reid offense that generally will specialize in one back. He could be a guy who could be a league winner, could be a first-round pick next year, or we could be laughing about the time Damian Williams was the top 30 player.
Eugene and Alma just selected Patrick Mahomes here, and now to close out round 3, Scott, back to you.
I don't believe in buying at the high end of a bucket. I'm going to pay the most you should ever pay for Chris Godwin, but I believe in him.
I love this.
I believe in Arians. I believe in Adam Levitan, who's a big Godwin guy. Godwin, really, I think it's a mistake to call him a breakout player because I feel like the breakout happened last year, but this is another layer to climb. He's not coming off the field. They have skanky running backs. Chris Sims knows a little bit about Tampa Bay passing games. He can tell us, he can sell me on why Chris Godwin was the right pick to close out round 3.
Well, let's send it right over there to Chris and Matt to take it away.
You want to make a case for
Well,
Chris Godwin?
I think that's a great under-the-radar pick. Again, I'm clueless about fantasy football, but I know the reality is, Bruce Arians, Jameis Winston I expect to be better, and yes, Chris Godwin having a much bigger role than he's had in years past.
Meanwhile, we try to avoid giving credit to the guys at the desk whenever we can. But
Please.
You did like the Leonard Fournette pick by Daigle.
Daigle, dude, I like that pick a lot. I mean, Leonard Fournette, you made a lot of the strong points already. That offensive line was banged up last year. He was banged up. He's healthy. He's one of the freakier running backs in the game as far as physical ability. And let's not forget, the quarterback situation is going to help him in Jacksonville. There will not be 9 guys at the line of scrimmage. Nick Foles will back some people off with their pass game. I think that's a solid one there. That stood out to me. Way to go, dude.
Quickly, about Melvin Gordon. I mean, they talk about, a third-round pick like, oh, it's fine. The third round's a fine place. But isn't that that's a big pick to give away? Are you worried about Gordon?
I'm extremely worried. I think this could get ugly. I don't know what ground Melvin Gordon has to stand on. I'm not sure if he necessarily has the leverage Ezekiel Elliott has in this situation. They got good running backs there. Certainly risky. If he's there, he's going to put up big stats. But I don't know if he'll be there.
All right, back to you guys at the desk.
Thank you, Matt Straub. We keep it here with Scott Pianowski, who just made the first pick of the 4th round. You took the first LA Ram wide receiver off the board, and that is Robert Woods.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to go with Cooks as the first Ram receiver. I think you have to back off Kupp a little bit off a major injury, but this is really a Sean McVay pick. It's a Jared Goff pick. It's a Rams offense pick. And Woods, he was an okay player in Buffalo. We've seen how much he thrives in the McVay scheme. Last year, over 1,200 yards. I think if you're going to go Rams receiver, I think he's the first guy you get. Really tempted to go Marlon Mack, but I already had 2 running backs. I thought it was more important to lock down that second receiver because maybe Godwin really isn't technically a number 1. If you go late to the number 1 party at receiver, you want to be early to the number 2 receiver. That's what I did here.
Marlon Mack, by the way, just was taken by Eugene and Alma. Pat, I do want to talk about Eugene and Alma's final pick in round 3, because that's Patrick Mahomes. We're big advocates of late-round quarterbacks, but a lot of people in your home drafts are going to have a quarterback selected in round 2 or round 3 like we saw here. How do you feel about that strategy?
I mean, I'm still team sharp on that one. You just as great as Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is one of my favorite humans. Just to watch someone who plays football the way Pat Mahomes, you kind of want him on your team almost for that reason. But I mean, your draft, he's not going to have another 50 touchdown season, another 5,200-yard season, and you're buying at the absolute peak of his value when it's just the position's arguably 22 to 24 deep this year. Not with that kind of elite talent, of course, but there's still is great. No matter how amazing the season was last year, it's just still too deep of a position.
We say it every year. It's the deepest quarterback year in history. At least with Mahomes, you have an every-week starter. Don't draft a second quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't care how good it looks. Oh, get Ben Roethlisberger in the 13th round. Forget it. Just let it go and have the extra roster flexibility.
It's legit 25 deep at quarterback. Michael selected Julian Edelman. Then we had Junior selecting Derrick Henry. That means John Daigle, you're up.
Wanted Chris Godwin. Didn't happen because Scott's a jerk. So let's keep this simple. Tyler Lockett was a sub 60% slot guy without Doug Baldwin last year in the games Doug Baldwin did not play. Doug Baldwin's obviously no longer on the team. Tyler Lockett now should be extremely efficient in a full-time slot role. And to me, he's actually a wide receiver 1. Like, I'm extremely happy to have him right now.
I was considering him at the turn. 158.3 rating on passes to him last year. And you say, well, regression's going to hit, of course, but he might gain 30 or 40 targets with Baldwin gone. I think Tyler Lockett in the 4th round is outstanding value.
And obviously the Seahawks passing volume was quite low last season, but there are no proven wide receivers or tight ends on that team outside of him. You have DK Metcalf, you have David Moore, you have Jerron Brown. I mean, Tyler Lockett, especially in the slot, we love slot receivers in fantasy football because we know a lot of targets can be funneled to them.
We love slot receivers, and we love guys who are the undisputed #1 passing option in their game. And he's tied to probably a Hall of Famer someday in Russell Wilson.
The proven rapport will certainly help with the development going on around him.
We had another Seahawk go right after John Daigle. That's to Kyle, and that's Chris Carson, who to me is one of my favorite players to draft in every single draft I'm in, because he is someone that we know that they are going to run the football, and he's their unquestioned, to me, #1 running back.
I know I was telling everybody to not listen to Coach speak, but Pete Carroll keeps saying this. Carson can catch the ball. We can use him more as a receiver. Mike Davis gone now. We know Schottenheimer likes a ground approach. Chris Carson has been a great value in a lot of drafts I've seen going in the 5th or 6th round, but even in the 4th round, I think Carson makes sense.
Scott Davies selected the 2nd Rams wide receiver. That's Brandon Cooks. That means we send it over to Andy Behrens, who is on the clock.
I got to tell you, first of all, I want to just tip my cap to John for referring to himself in the 3rd person. That is an astonishing flex. In a show like this, that was amazing. Kudos to you. I'm going to go David Montgomery here.
Homer
this
pick.
Is,
Homer
with a nod
pick.
of respect to my man, Brad Evans. I actually had to restrain myself in the 3rd round, didn't go after Montgomery. I mean, the preseason buzz is pretty obvious. The camp buzz is pretty obvious. Everybody knows about him. He's basically stepping into, not to oversimplify, but good chance he steps into that Jordan Howard workload and does a lot more with it. He's looked fantastic so far. I think I'm getting 250-plus touches here. Fills out my flex position. This is my 3rd running back, so I'm going to have to veer away from that spot next time.
John Daigle, since Andy Behrens did insult you, I want to get your opinion on his selection, because Andy started the draft off with DeAndre Hopkins, who is most likely the unanimous wide receiver 1, but then you have Dalvin Cook, Devontae Freeman, and just took his 3rd running back in rookie David Montgomery.
Just a garbage team.
What's funny is that, it's considered blasphemy among the fantasy community. I'm just not a David Montgomery guy. I don't think it's his backfield. I think it's a 3-headed backfield. Mike Davis is a proven runner. Mike Davis outplayed Rashad Penny, a 1st-rounder just last year. Over 100 carries, 40-plus targets last year for Seattle. He can do it all. So if you are looking at an every down back, the most value, in my opinion, is still Mike Davis in the later rounds. Please, neither of y'all snipe him.
It also looks like a very wide usage tree. This is going to be a very long box score when you look at the Bears this year. And Nagy, I don't think he's going to force the ball to anybody. This looks around early on Montgomery to me. Also, he had a really splashy week 1 preseason,
which we all love.
So his ADP is on the rise. You know,
the jump cut actually moved him around.
Josh probably tweeted about him or something and just blew up his ADP.
It really did.
I will say really quickly, David Montgomery, they traded up for him, and you know, coaches with rookies usually try to tamp down expectations. Matt Nagy commits to immediately, almost every day, keep comparing David Montgomery to Kareem Hunt. So Matt Nagy probably pounded the table for David Montgomery.
You know, it's funny. I remember when Sean Payton compared Kamara, and I was going to think, okay, this is probably Reggie Bush, right? And he compared him to Marshall Faulk. I thought that was ridiculous. You know what? You won that one, Payton.
Who knew he'd be better than Marshall Faulk? Okay, after Andy Behrens, Ryan selected Kenny Galladay. Then Matt Martin selected DJ Moore. Cooper Kupp went to Eric Santiago. That means Patrick Doherty closes out here with round 4.
I was heartbroken when DJ Moore came off the board. I really, really wanted him as my wide receiver 2. And
even with 2 Carolina guys, that wouldn't bother you?
No, I don't think. To me,
Curtis Samuel's going to be the wide receiver.
Full on stack.
I'm just laser focused on what's the best pick this round, even if they're on the same team. I'll worry about that later. I do not want to go 3rd running back, but I'm going to go a 3rd running back here with Mark Ingram. I feel like people are kind of sleeping on the fact that the Ravens went out and got Mark Ingram in free agency to lead, what was, after Lamar Jackson was installed at quarterback last year, was the most run-heavy offense in the NFL since the 1970s. And I feel like to let the lead back in that offense fall to the 5th round is a kind of, I just think maybe we're all kind of seeing a guy who could be the 3rd down back. So, I mean, just sky-high upside for Mark Ingram.
And to your point, Warren Sharp has them projected with the 4th easiest rushing schedule right now. So his schedule is beautiful as well.
It's funny, the mobile quarterback opens rushing lanes, but they also take some of the rushing yards for themselves. So you get a pro and a con with that.
Let's send it over to the guys with the good hair. That is Chris Sims and Matt Stroud.
It's kind of like full PPR versus half PPR.
Oh, wow.
Fair to say.
It's fair to say.
One interesting subplot of that round, the John Daigle-Andy Behrens rivalry seemed to escalate.
Yes, it
David
did.
Montgomery at the center of it.
Right.
Which side of that debate do you land on when it comes to Montgomery?
I seem to lean more with John on this one. And Montgomery is a fine player, certainly. I don't want to be overhyped about what I saw last week against a bunch of second and third stringers. I do worry about Mike Davis and Tariq Cohen taking away touches for him, running back by committee. So that's just a little scary. It's iffy to me right now. Now, I will say this. Montgomery, I think, is going to be a goal line back where he might rack up some points that way with easy touchdowns. The other one that jumped out to me was Chris Carson, okay? Chris Carson, you know, a little bit like we just talked about, the coach is hyping up David Montgomery and they traded up to get him. Let's not forget Rashad Penny is there. And he is an end of the first round pick. He is super talented. I think that could hurt Chris Carson a little bit in his touches this year. As awesome of a player as I think he is, I think that could be a shared responsibility.
Interesting. So possibly a round or two early on Carson.
And one more, just so I butt in. I know. I love the DJ Moore pick by Matt Martin. I do. And again, I know nothing about fantasy, but I know Norv Turner's offense, DJ Moore's talent, and I think he is a guy that's kind of like a Tyreek Hill. He's Weapon X. He's going to get carries, catches, touchdowns. He could be one of those sleeper guys.
He is a player who led the NFL in yards after the catch last season as just a rookie. Right. Pat, take us to the start of round 5.
I was deciding between Robbie Anderson and Christian Kirk, and I just decided with a little more role certainty, essentially with Robbie Anderson, who I've always loved his explosive play upside. I think he's kind of got untapped compiling potential. Last year the Jets were running maybe the most horizontal offense in NFL history. The first 3/4 of the season, they finally opened things up in December. Robbie Anderson and Sam Darnold had excellent chemistry the final month of the season, and he's a guy he's just been on the verge of breaking out for 2 or 3 years. And Adam Gase called a very conservative offense in Miami too. That is a concern, but I just feel like Robbie Anderson is kind of overdue to finally have his moment. He's flirted with moments for a while now. I think he might finally have it this year.
I feel like a more expanded route tree for him this year. The only thing I'm not sure about is Adam Gase a good football coach?
I'm not sure either.
I think it's a very fair question because you kind of undersold it here, Pat. It's not like he just had a conservative offense. He was last in the NFL in plays run offensively last year.
One of the slowest offenses, as conservative play calling as possible. But the way he's telling it, he's got new toys. Finally, has kind of the players he wants.
And as much as we make fun of it, I mean, that first game of the preseason probably made you have a little bit of warm fuzzies talking about this Jets offense a little bit.
No.
Let's go. Eric was the pick right after Pat, and he selected Sony Michel. Then we had Josh Jacobs, another rookie, with Matt Martin. 4 to Ryan was Tyler Boyd. That brings us to Andy Behrens here with the 5th pick of round 5.
Oh, the Mike Davis hype had me rolling. It's really hard to focus at this point. I am going to go Calvin Ridley here, explosive player. This is my second player from the Atlanta offense. Again, I don't mind doing that as long as I think that an offense can reach 28, 30 points per game, and I think that's where they are. Just a small uptick in targets for Ridley could really lead to a huge season. Saw less than 100 targets last year. I think this season it's probably north of 110. I think that's going to mean big things. I don't know if it's another 10 touchdown season, but it's going to be a good one.
Andy, because last year it was difficult to kind of predict the splash and breakout games for Calvin Ridley. You just mentioned it. I'm assuming you're just more interested and inclined to think they will rack up more volume this year as, I guess, the true number 2 next to Julio rather than Mohamed Sanu eating that up for half the season.
I feel like there's a little bit of a myth of the number of wide receivers that are actually really super consistent week to week. I mean, those are the guys that are seeing 150 targets, right? And almost everybody else kind of goes into this Ridley pool where that's fine. If they have 3 huge weeks and he carries me in those weeks, that's a big deal. I'll take that. And again, he's not my wide receiver 1. He's my wide receiver 2. I've got DeAndre Hopkins, who's providing a very high floor for me at the position.
After Andy, Scott Davies selected James White, then Philip Lindsay went to Cal Smith. That means John Daigle is up.
Means we're going wide receiver 2 here because a man who continues to get lost in all that middling wide receiver talk is Allen Robinson. Last year wasn't running routes until June. Scott's about to fight me on this. Wasn't running routes until June last year as he recovered, dealt with rib injuries and several other injuries, but then came back 10-143-1 and the wild card for the Bears. Fully healthy this offseason. Trubisky reports out of camp. He's actually been terrible so far, but that's okay. That's fine. I still believe Allen Robinson is a value at this point.
Love the pick. I think the Bears are like the steakhouse where they have everything that's great except for the steak. That's the quarterback and Trubisky.
yeah.
But Robinson, as you said, I was fading him last year. He really got his feet acclimated in the second half of the year. Best player on the field in that playoff loss. I think this is now a great time to buy him at maybe a round and a half discount. He was going to be my pick in the 5th round.
That's why you sighed. Okay.
That's why I sighed. No, I'm with you. I'm with
yeah.
you on Robinson. Last year, he was my biggest fade of the season.
Yes.
I think he's going to be one of the biggest values and maybe a league winner in 2019.
I agree.
Let me just turn to the camera real quick and ask the people out there, do you want to win your fantasy league? If you answered yes and you're tuning into this, also download the Rotoworld Football Podcast. It's twice a week during the preseason, 4 times a week during the regular season. Our favorite picks, sleepers, players we're avoiding, and all the news you need to know to win your league and your draft. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts or go to rotoworld.com/podcasts. All right, so after John Daigle, Evan Ingram is the 4th tight end off the board. Talk about funnel targets. He might see a lot of them with Junior and the New York Giants. Miles Sanders, another rookie running back, went to Michael Epstein. We're still waiting again for Eugene and Alma. Pat, do you have any read on what Miles Sanders is going to do his rookie year? I mean, this is the earliest that the Eagles have selected a running back in quite some time, but we know that in the past when they don't have a number 1, that Doug Peterson loves to use a multitude of backs.
He has. Howie Roseman after the draft said that he had been waiting years for a running back like Miles Sanders in the draft, which, if you're reading into it, not hard to read into it, could be saying we're going to get – the only reason we've had these committees is because we didn't have the right back leading it. And Miles Sanders has been blowing up Eagles camp. I mean, multiple news outlets, the reporters basically can't contain their hype for Miles Sanders. I just still worry. Jordan Howard did not disappear. Miles Sanders is a rookie. As good as he's looked in camp and practice, things will change in the regular season. I think the committee will be there to start the year. I think Miles Sanders could seize control of it quite quickly. But I just think there's enough worrying signs there that I think the committee will not it's not going to just be gone week 1, even though there's reason to believe it will be at some point this season.
Eugene selected Kenyon Drake, and then we turn to Scott Pianowski to close out round 5.
Well, I think I need another receiver because I didn't tap that position early. So Mike Williams makes sense for me here. Christian Kirk makes sense for me here.
And your other 2 receivers already on your roster are Chris Godwin and Robert Woods, as we can see in the beautiful board behind us.
I know I'm buying at the high end of the range. I think Christian Kirk's a special player. And I believe in the coaching was about as bad as it could get last year. Now they've upgraded. What if this offense really does take the lead?
And he still made plays even with all those problems.
Here's the thing, right? The 2014 receiver class was obscene. They were so good, but usually receivers need a couple of years to get acclimated. When any rookie receiver or tight end for that matter isn't over his head right away, I think it's a great sign. And he did it with Josh Rosen. He did it with a coaching staff that was antiquated. I can't wait to see what he can do with a real coaching staff this year.
Let's send it over to Matt and Chris.
It almost sounded like you were singing there for a second.
I do not want that to happen, trust me.
He was yodeling.
In fantasy leagues, Chris, I think there's almost like a discount for Raiders because of the circus factor surrounding the team.
Right.
So let's talk about Josh Jacobs, who went that round, the rookie first rounder playing for your former coach.
Yeah.
Do you think that was possibly a steal in that round?
I think it is possibly one of the hidden gems of the first 5 rounds. And I don't mean to give Matt Martin all this credit all the time, but I like Josh Jacobs, one, because, again, John Gruden, my history with him and knowing how he likes to orchestrate his offense, this is going to be his Alvin Kamara. This is what he's great friends with Sean Payton. I think that's why he got Josh Jacobs in the first round, not only to run the football, but we could see him get 70, 80 catches in the pass game too. So that certainly jumped out to me as a good one.
You had me at Alvin Kamara there. Another running back who went that round. Philip Lindsay, obviously a huge surprise last year, 1,000-yard rusher. What do you think he'll do this year?
Well, I'm again looking at the offense, and that's where I think the big improvement is. You got a quarterback in Joe Flacco. I still think is going to scare some defenses with his arm down the field. There's an improvement there. Rich Scangarello being the new OC, coming from the Kyle Shanahan system. You know they're going to be able to run the football. Mike Munchak being the new offensive line coach there. Those are things that just jump out to me in the football world. Do I go talented player and the right support system around him could lead to some really good things.
Thanks, guys. And Chris, you're giving so much credit to Matt. I might think you are actually drafting Matt's team over there.
I'm not. Trust me. I'm not. I really liked the whole round, though. Seriously, there was a lot of. If we had more time, I'd elaborate on everybody's picks because I thought there was a lot of good ones.
Scott, you're the first pick of round 6. You went with another wide receiver. 4 in a row for you.
Yeah, I'm drafting like the way the Lions used to about 10 years ago. I'm just going to keep pounding them, and maybe one of them will hit. But Mike Williams, 10 touchdowns last year. That touchdown rate isn't sustainable, but I'm thinking the volume might go up 20 to 40 targets. And because I drafted this position late, I'm going to try to attack it with volume. I'd also like to point out, We have projected standings in the Yahoo draft, okay? And my colleague Andy Behrens right now is projected for last place, and normally I wouldn't care.
Not a surprise.
But I just don't want to see him relegated. I want one of these Rotoworld guys relegated. So Andy, you look like $1 million, man, but you got to maybe focus a little bit more in these middle rounds.
What are we even getting relegated to? What could be lower than this? That's my question for you.
Wow, how dare you? By the way, what a great tool that the draft allows you to have on Yahoo in terms of being able to grade during the draft. I'm sure it's not often that Andy Behrens is in last place when that happens.
It just gives you a sense of where I'm at. I think it's actually even more valuable in fantasy baseball. Am I getting enough stolen bases? Do I have enough batting average? It just gives you it's a sense of where you are in your draft. Don't live by it. Don't try to win. Don't try to outsmart the algorithm. But it's just a good sanity check, like that you're on the right road.
After Scott Pianowski again took Mike Williams, Eugene selected Alshon Jeffrey. Michael selected Darrell Henderson. Deshaun Watson went to Junior. That means John Daigle was on the clock just as Darrell Henderson goes off the board.
Contrary to belief, the 49ers have a running back one. Jarrett McKinnon sat out an entire year, came back to practice for 2 days, and is now out 2 weeks. This is a two-back system because they have a special team back. Jeffrey Wilson is injured as the fifth stringer. This is either Tevin Coleman or Matt Breida, and both of them can coexist, although Coleman will be the pass-catching specialist. So Tevin Coleman, the past 3 weeks alone, has risen very high up my board. That is the Niners' RB1.
John, can we diagnose your roster here just for a little bit?
No.
Because we started off looking and watching you select Ezekiel Elliott, who has not played football yet, Leonard Fournette, who was benched for a 7th-round undrafted free agent at the end of last season. Now you have Tevin Coleman, and those are your 3 backs on your roster.
And Tevin Coleman might be a starter considering Zeke's current status. So, yes, it's going to get dicey, but these are 3 guys I truly believe in. And really, it's just taking the value of recency bias, what they did last year. I am buying in that they will be better than they did last year, or they'll be back to what we believe is their form, what I believe is their form.
I think there's 2 really great things you get here. 1, exposure to a Shanahan offense. And 2, you made the great point that McKinnon really isn't in the way. People think he is. Oh, my God, no, 3 backs. It used to be worried about teams with 2 backs. Now it's like the 3-back set worries us, but McKinnon really isn't in the way. And everybody who played here last year in this backfield was successful.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, Breed is going to be a great pick for somebody later. I hope it's my team. But saddling up to the presumable #1 back in San Francisco in a Shanahan offense, I think is a great move.
And we're slowly starting a stack, like sneakily starting a stack here.
I will say Matt Breida's had a better season in Kyle Shanahan offense than Tevin Coleman ever has. And Tevin Coleman had a lot of chances over the years where he could have kind of maybe run away with the backfield and never did. And
my main reason not to draft Coleman is I really want Breida later.
We're on a little bit of a tight end run here after John Daigle selected. We had Jared going to Kyle, then Scott Davey selected Hunter Henry. Andy Behrens is back up. Andy, send it over to you.
It is tempting to go tight end here as well. O.J. Howard is still on the board. I am going to veer away from that position, however, because I've got a pet player out there that I definitely want to roster. I feel like I've taken him in about 75% of my drafts so far. I'm taking Curtis Samuel right here. Exceptional separation skills. Love what he did at the end of last season. If you look at those final 5 games, you take those target totals, he reached double digits in targets twice in those games. You extend that out, you get about 130, 135 targets on the season. I think he's in for a huge breakout in year 3.
Andy, you need to follow more fantasy analysts than just Josh Norris on Twitter.
Well, and Matt Harmon, obviously, over at Yahoo as well. But Andy, we can just cancel the rest of the show. This
No. I've got Harmon blocked. I've got Harmon blocked.
The rest of the show can just be me and you, speaking eloquently, poetically about Curtis Samuel's breakout here heading into week 3. Because as you mentioned, I mean, he really didn't play over 50% of the snaps until December hit. And to me, this is an offense that really can support 2 wide receivers. And we kind of look at offenses that can come out of nowhere and support those. And with DJ Moore already off the board and Curtis Samuel now, and it just makes a lot of sense that we could see a real breakout. And everyone's been speaking that during training camp.
Yeah, that's the one thing that makes me nervous, right? He's basically America's sleeper at this point, and quite often those guys don't pan out, but everything that we saw in December was just fantastic. Like, this setup is perfect for him. I really don't think that there should be that great a difference in value between him and Moore.
So after Andy selected Curtis Samuel, we had Ryan selecting Tariq Cohen. Then O.J. Howard finally went off the board to Matt Martin.
Yeah.
Scott, let me turn back to you. We had Hunter Henry go before O.J. Howard, Jared Cook go before O.J. Howard. I mean, Evan Ingram go before him. This is a real breakout candidate at tight end.
I think it's a great value. I considered him at the turn, and you just mentioned 3 other tight ends. Fine picks in their own right, but I would not have taken them over Howard. I think people are worried that Arians doesn't have a history of featuring tight ends, but he's never had O.J. Howard before. The best coaches work personnel to scheme, not scheme to personnel. I think Bruce Arians is going to figure out a way to make O.J. Howard a Pro Bowler this year. I think in the 6th round, after all those other tight ends a little bit below him, I think Howard's the number 4 tight end after that big 3 and a tremendous value this late in round 6.
Eric selected our 3rd quarterback at 6'11". That's Aaron Rodgers. Pat, you're on the clock.
You know, I try to tune out some of the summer noise. You can tell sometimes what's legit and what's fake, and I'm kind of worried about the noise about Dante Pettis suddenly having to re-earn his role as the number 1 receiver is legit. It's been laid on thick basically the past week, and Dante Pettis was going to be a no-brainer for me here. Like if this draft was like a week ago, 10 days ago. But I think I'm going to make the very anti-PPR, maybe just anti-common sense pick of Will Fuller and kind of shoot for the moon at my number 3 receiver spot and see gamble on this connection with Deshaun Watson actually being special. I mean, Will Fuller is one of the biggest game breakers in the NFL. One of the biggest game breakers we've seen this decade, but he doesn't stay on the field. He drops a lot of passes, coming off a major orthopedic injury. But at this point, my receiver core is very shaky. I'm just going to kind of shoot for the moon.
And your wide receiver core
you need
is
Rotoworld, right? You need it for the Will Fuller updates.
and your wide receiver core is Adam Thielen and Robbie Anderson now with Will Fuller. I'm going to send it over this desk. I'm a little hesitant to because we hit on a few of Chris Sims' favorite and Aaron Rodgers, Kyle Shanahan. Guys, take it away.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Rodgers versus Watson. Watson went before Rodgers. Do you like that? Or would you rather take Rodgers first?
I mean, I love both quarterbacks. I would rather have Rodgers, I think, first over Watson. There's, still offensive line issues with the Houston Texans. Patrick brings up the fact of Will Fuller, the health issue. If he's not there, who's going to be that second go-to guy? Gosh, we can't just drop back and look at DeAndre Hopkins every time. So still think he puts up good stats. But Aaron Rodgers, I just look at that new offense. They're going to be able to run the ball maybe for the first time in his career. And he is Aaron freaking Rodgers. So where 25-2, quite honestly, is just an average year for him. And I would expect a big bounce back year for the Packers and Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and with Watson, I mean, it's a question of, his greatest strength is that he plays aggressively. That's probably the biggest risk with him, too, is getting injured.
Yeah, it definitely is. The way he plays, he takes a lot of car crash hits. Now, you do have the rushing aspect of his game, too, that you can add into the point system and his rushing touchdowns. So I think it's very intriguing. Very close. I would have probably erred on Rodgers. Hey, Andy, I like Curtis Samuel pick, too. I do. I think it's that gimmick offense in Carolina. It's like a college wishbone, Cam Newton, people going all different ways. I think he'll be featured a lot along with DJ Moore at that receiver position.
Thanks a lot, guys. Let's hit the other 8 contestants in this draft. I mentioned them at the top. There are loyal readers, there are loyal followers, there are loyal subscribers as well. First, we'll look at Michael Epstein, who his favorite team is sadly the New York Giants, as he points out. He also loves Armageddon and Heavyweights. You remember that movie, Heavyweights?
Of course.
Fantastic, underrated. Eugene and Alma as well. We have a pair selecting. Their best sleeper pick of all time was Dante Hall. What a throwback, the human joystick of Dante Hall, because in their draft as well, they were able to have return yards in there. Ryan Lavender wanted to be an Olympic skier growing up. How fantastic. How interesting.
Yeah, still to date, never been skiing.
Really? Very on brand, though, for NBC Sports as well. Mentions Larry Johnson and Priest Holmes as well. Fantastic. Let's go over to Matt Martin. Chris, maybe the reason why you love Matt Martin so much, Matt Martin was a former NFL player. Matt Martin played for the Tennessee Titans from 2002 to 2004. I don't think any of us at this table can say that about ourselves.
I did not play for the Titans.
That was a
I can tell you that much.
He says he's an RE appraiser, and today he's an RB appraiser.
Oh, there we go. Look at you. Eric Santiago, he is having a baby in 9 weeks. Pat, any advice?
No.
You've had 2.
I don't believe in advice, really. Each situation is so unique. You got to do whatever makes you comfortable. So
that's basically what he says on Twitter about 10 times a day, too.
I hear you. Junior Delgado is also joining us. His favorite television show is The Office. Honestly, he says he's watched it 5 times. Scott, this is my admission. Never seen an episode of The Office.
That's what she said.
Okay. Kyle Smith is our second to last, and his favorite movie is all the Star Wars movies. Another fun fact he wants to share about himself is as a baby, he won a baby beauty pageant. Again, something none of us can say about ourselves most likely.
I can say I won second prize in a beauty contest. We were playing Monopoly.
It was yesterday.
We were playing Monopoly, but it got me $10.
We'll close it out here with our 8, again, loyal readers and subscribers. Scott Davey, his biggest fear is heights, uncontrolled heights, like being on a roof of a house and having 2 picks back-to-back in a snake draft.
I thought he was afraid of being in first place. He's a fear of success. It's very common, actually.
Scott, speaking of you, we want to pump up some Yahoo stuff here. We've all made some bad life choices. Don't make playing in the wrong fantasy football league one of them. Play Yahoo Fantasy Football. Besides the best fantasy app, they've got a new best ball draft format. Love best ball and daily fantasy games for everyone. All in one app. Make better choices. Choose Yahoo Fantasy Football. Go to yahoo.com/fantasyfootball. Let's pick it up at the draft. Oh, we have a little bit of time. Excuse me.
Let me say this. You mentioned best ball for Yahoo, right? The best way to learn about the player pool, okay?
Love it.
You get extra, everybody loves draft day, but you may not want the extra maintenance of a team. Best ball gives you the draft experience without the extra maintenance. And if you do a couple of these best ball drafts, when you get into your main big money draft, your hometown, your college draft, whatever it is, you'll be more ready than ever because you've best balled.
And I do want to explain what best ball is. You just draft, and then it sets the optimal lineup for you each and every week. Is it 16 rounds, 20 rounds? What is it on Yahoo?
I'm not sure exactly how many rounds.
But I love it. I mean, I have done 10 or 20 of them already. And again, it does give you a great advantage going into your drafts at home as well.
And no stress at the start 6?
None.
Unlike
no waivers.
unlike this league, which I might forget to pick up waivers, like when it comes around. In best ball, you don't have to worry about that.
None of
Best ball's fantastic.
And so guys like Deshaun Jackson, Will Fuller, we mentioned a few of them in here. They're even better plays in best
That's a
ball
great
as well.
point. The boom bust receiver is the best friend to you in best ball because you don't have to call your shot ahead of time.
Pat, you're back up here at the start of round 7. And let's take a look at Pat's full team. We have, let me look at it, Christian McCaffrey again starting it off, Aaron Jones, Adam Thielen, Mark Ingram, that kind of boomer bust wide receiver, and Robbie Anderson, and Will Fuller back-to-back. Pat, this is not a best ball league, but who are you going with in round 7?
I'm going to get things going with an overdraft here. I don't know how much of an overdraft it is. I would say the tight ends went off the board maybe a little faster than I was expecting, and one of my great loves for the 2019 season is Vance McDonald, and he was kind of like the last what I viewed as like a guy I went starting every week for me at tight end. Someone who wasn't even a starter last year and finished top 12 in tight end yardage. One of the biggest big play threats at the tight end position. Steelers, what 230 leftover targets from last year, and what their biggest offseason addition was Dante Moncrief. I just think things set up really, really well for like a kind of a next step season for Vance McDonald. And I took him probably about 15, 20, 30 spots ahead of his ADP, but I love having him on my team.
But we always talk about draft strategies, right, Scott? And in some ways, take players you want to take is okay. Like, just destroy ADP and get players in some situations, like here with Vince McDonald, where Pat didn't have a tight end, where that's totally fine.
I think by the 7th round, forget ADP. If you want a player you think he makes sense for your roster, and especially you're on the end, right? You're going to have to wait 20-plus picks before you select.
A lot of waiting.
And at this point, if you like the guy, take him. And look at the projection. 610 yards last year. We're projecting him for 817 yards. So a spike season with all those vacated targets makes a lot of sense to me.
He's genuinely has every down talent. Like Jesse James was there as the inline blocker, but Pro Football Focus graded Vance McDonald as a better blocker. So like Vance McDonald can stay on the field. You shouldn't worry about Xavier Grimble. Just draft Vance McDonald. It's not that hard.
And again, like 240 targets are on the table for that team. We know Juju's still going to get a lot, and he got a lot last year, but just adding more to Vance's plate. I mean, he could ultimately end up, Pat, as a tight end 4 when the season ends.
I would consider him maybe the most likely of the people outside the top 3 to crash the top 3.
All right, we're going to go to Andy Behrens in a second because Eric selected Jarvis Landry, then Sammy Watkins went to Matt Martin. Ryan Lavender selected Dante Pettis in round 7. And now let's turn to Andy Behrens here with the 5th pick of round 7.
Yeah, not to continue the Vance McDonald hype too much, but that was definitely a guy that I was looking at. If not this round, maybe the next round. You guys nailed all the key points, right? There's just a huge target share there that is available to someone. He has passed the eye test almost every time we've seen him. I am actually going to go A.J. Green here.
Yep.
Like at some point, it's the right time for A.J. Green, right? He's a clear-cut wide receiver 1 if he's healthy coming into the season. It's been pretty murky. What did Zach Taylor say? That they hope to have him in the beginning half of the season. I don't know what that means. I don't know how to interpret that. Maybe that's 2 weeks in. Maybe that's 3 weeks in. I've built out the rest of my active roster right now, right? Like I have my running backs. I have my receivers. got my flex, so I'm basically looking at bench spots or sketching in quarterback or tight end. I think A.J. Green, of everybody on the board right now, again, round 7 probably has the highest upside.
And what Andy is referring to is A.J. Green has an ankle injury that involves ligaments. But Andy, like you just said, DeAndre Hopkins is your wide receiver 1. But if A.J. Green hits, and maybe for those 12 games for the rest of the season, you have him probably above Calvin Ridley. You probably have him above Curtis Samuel. So this is a potentially great value.
I know Andy's coworker Scott loves drafting injured players. Just loves it.
Yeah, I always am telling people not to get drunk on injury optimism, but I actually think round 7 for A.J. Green is reasonable. I'm still seeing him go in round 5 and round 6 in some drafts. That's too early for me, but I think 7 is reasonable. Once you have a core of your team set and you can start to think, okay, what's the upside down the road? I wouldn't have made the pick, but I think this round actually makes sense.
Well, my eyes are about to pop out of my head because after A.J. Green went off the board, then was D.D. Westbrook, then Larry Fitzgerald. And let's take a look at John Daigle's team as well. Start off with Ezekiel Elliott, then George Kittle, Leonard Fournette, Tyler Lockett, Allen Robinson, and Tevin Coleman. Daigle in round 7, who are you going with?
Yeah, so for me, it's one of 2 options. And I think I'm going with the top running back left on the board. Some people think that Alvin Kamara is suddenly going to get Mark Ingram's touches because Ingram's gone, and that's not the case. This is a true 2-back system.
Killing me, Daigle.
You just timed out.
And I timed out and drafted.
This is great because this happens in your home league.
I didn't realize I had that much time left.
Where someone is not paying attention, and John Daigle, despite not wanting to, selected Andrew Luck, a quarterback in round 7. Usually he doesn't select a quarterback till round 12.
The Colts just issued a statement today. They think they're going to have Luck's leg reattached week 1.
So tell us about Andrew Luck here, John Daigle.
He's dealing with an injury, and you shouldn't take him in the 7th round. That's pretty much my analysis.
How did that happen?
I thought I had more. I thought I had 30 seconds left. I was wrong. I did not. So,
well, that was the Evan Silva memorial timeout.
Well, let me tell you, this is what you do in your Yahoo draft. Is you fill your queue with players you like. So if you do run out of time, it draws from the top of that queue. A rookie mistake from Daigle.
What a shame.
Wow.
Well, at least they look.
How
actually,
nervous,
you won't be here with us. So.
But let me take this opportunity to talk about the Colts, right? Because how nervous are we about T.Y. Hilton, about Marlon Mack, about Eric Ebron? Because if it is Jacoby Brissett and not Andrew Luck, then it's a major issue heading into the season. Daigle, you want to take this?
We've seen T.Y. Hilton without Andrew Luck, and it is not pretty.
Yep.
T.Y. Hilton needs Andrew Luck to be that top 10 wide receiver. The question is whether Andrew Luck's now what we believe is a bone injury that they said this morning is
Jim Irsay said it. The
is it
owner
going to
said
hold him back? And I'm so flustered I have him on my roster right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to recover.
But I will say this, John. If he does hit, right, Pat, he has the real legit chance of being the quarterback 1 overall.
He does, and he's probably going to be out there week. I got to say, I was not worried. Today, the Colts said, well, it's not exactly like the Kevin Durant situation. Like they're basically trying to differentiate it from the Kevin Durant situation a little bit. So that was I thought it was an odd, bizarre statement from the Colts today.
And it was a bizarre pick as well.
Teams have no incentive to tell us the truth.
They don't.
So
the Colts are very well versed.
Remember the year Luck didn't play?
The
The Colts were basically lying to us for 5 months.
I mean, they were saying this time that year, we'll be out there, it'll be fine.
You did start a little bit, not of a quarterback run, but more quarterbacks are going off the board. Right after Daigle, Corey Davis went off the board, then Matt Ryan went to Michael Epstein. Here, Eugene selected Marvin Jones Jr. That means Scott Pianowski is going to close out round 7, I should say. And let's take a look at his team as well when the graphic is popping up. Nick Chubb to start it off, James Conner, Chris Godwin, Robert Woods, Christian Kirk, Mike Williams, a run of 4 wide receivers. Scott, where are you going now?
First of all, I want to announce I'm forming a documentary committee, and we're going to be filming the victory tour. Okay, we're going to have a 5-month story of this. It'll probably be on HBO.
We were in a budget meeting about it this morning. Yeah. They're thinking big.
I'm assembling, and look, I'm not doing this to troll John, but Latavius Murray was the best back.
Yeah, of course.
We've seen this before, right? I mean, Kamara cannot be a true 350-touch guy. They're going to have a hammer at the goal line. That's Murray, and if anything ever happens to Kamara, we're talking league-winning talent. I think he's a startable flex guy as it is. Banking on an offense you can bank on. Remember, the pass attempts have gone down the last 2 years as they've gotten more of a balanced offense. This is going to be a huge role, the Mark Ingram role for Murray, very startable player in a 12-team league.
Let's send it over to the side desk with Matt Stroup and Chris Sims.
I just want you to know, it really warms my heart that we had one of the experts auto draft. I'm just so happy.
Daigle, what an amateur he is.
Meanwhile, I mean, if we had one mantra coming into this, I think it was do not say anything flattering about Pat Doherty, if we can avoid it.
Okay.
However, you did like the Vance McDonald pick.
Pat's pick on Vance McDonald, yes, I had my eye on him. First off, and they explained a lot of the reasons. With Antonio Brown not being there, I think this is the new second go-to target behind Juju Smith-Schuster. So when Juju's doubled, or if there's a mismatch issue, I mean, Vance McDonald is this huge, physically imposing tight end, a lot like Gronk, to where even when he's covered, he's not covered. I expect a big year from him.
Yeah, we saw him throw down Chris Conte on that long
No
touchdown
doubt.
last year. Meanwhile, we saw 6 wide receivers go in a row that round. Landry, Sammy Watkins,
Yeah.
Pettis, A.J. Green, Westbrook, Fitzgerald. Who's your favorite out of that group? Anyone stand out?
Yeah, I mean, Pettis scares me. Hey, A.J. Green, when healthy, we know he's going to put big numbers. Sammy Watkins, to me, is the guy I'm kind of have my eye on. They're paying him Odell Beckham Jr. type money. I mean, they're not just going to want to throw out $16 million a year to a guy who's only got 40 or 50 catches. So if he can stay healthy with that offense and Mahomes and the attention to Tyreek Hill, he could have a phenomenal year statistically.
Let's start it off with round 8. Again, back to Scott Pianowski. Scott, we had that long run on tight ends, and now it kind of gets a bit iffy. And I guess you don't want to wait all the way back until he gets back to you. Take a tight end here, so you selected Austin Hooper with that.
Yeah, Austin Hooper, 3 years in the books, a very linear growth. You don't always see that with players. Last year, the 71 catches. I know the yards per catch was pretty low, but he's getting a lot of 2-point looks. And so even though he's never had more than, I think, 4 receiving touchdowns, I think this is maybe the latent upside of 6 to 8 touchdowns. And I like banking this Atlanta offense, 13 dome games this season. Yeah. I'm going to want a lot of Falcons. Now, granted, that probably means Ryan or Freeman or Julio or Ridley, but I think Hooper's a good way to get some cheaper exposure to the Falcons.
And I'm repeating myself, but how much of that is you don't just want to see what tight ends are left, in 24 picks when you get it back?
It's part of it. I mean, some people may say Hooper doesn't have that much of an upside because there's too many people ahead of him in this offense. But I think there's something to be said for floor, too. I expect 70-plus catches again for Hooper.
Right after Scott Pianowski, Lamar Miller went off the board to Eugene and Alma. Lamar Miller, I mean, it's been an interesting training camp so far for Lamar Miller, right, Daigle? In that there was a week there where you thought, wow, he's just a clear-cut workhorse running back, and then they trade the Houston Texans do for Duke Johnson as well.
Correct. There was 48 hours there where we thought Lamar Miller was free. His floor was free because Deontay Foreman was gone. And then comes Duke Johnson, who is better than Deontay Foreman. Duke Johnson will be more of a slot guy. Like, he takes away from QT more than he does Miller, but he's still undeniably a threat that brings Miller just even further down. Because Miller has no ceiling, right? It's just you're drafting him for 20 carries or whatever, and that does no longer exist.
I will say it's a remote chance, but Duke Johnson was a legitimate 3-down back in college, an elite 3-down back at the University of Miami, and he's probably been too typecast at this point in his career. Bill O'Brien, I don't think, is the kind of guy that's going to bust Duke Johnson out of that box, but if Lamar Miller falters, there's a non-0% chance Duke Johnson could even get more work on early downs.
Johnson, better receiver, and when you don't have a good offensive line, and the Texans sure don't, Johnson may translate better to that offense than Miller.
Yep, 7th straight season the Texans don't have a good offensive line. Daigle, I do want to tell you that you are on the clock. Let's not make the same mistake twice.
This is a time draft. You actually get 90 seconds.
right after Lamar Miller, Darius Geisman off the board, then Austin Eckler, who, depending on the Melvin Gordon situation, could be the workhorse heading into the season.
We're all big Eckler fans.
Now we head over to John Daigle here.
I want to make it quick because I'll be damned if I'm missing this pick. I am going to Deshaun Jackson here, and I'm going to click it. That way I don't miss it. Deshaun Jackson, proven rapport with Carson Wentz throughout the offseason, had all of offseason activities to also gain chemistry with him. Continues to blow up at Eagles camp. He is going to be the deep threat. Yep. I don't worry about Nelson Aguilar, who will slowly get faded out, especially with Arcega-Whiteside right on the other end of his career coming at him. So, yes, I'm a big Deshaun Jackson fan. The key will be starting him correct weeks, but if we project this offense to be as explosive as they will be, especially with Wentz being a hot MVP candidate, like Deshaun Jackson is the big beneficiary here.
And he has never played with a quarterback like Carson Wentz.
Correct.
And Carson Wentz has never played with a wide receiver quite like Deshaun Jackson. Again, we talk about spike weeks, and that's going to factor here with Deshaun Jackson. There's going to be some 15, 17, 21-point weeks with Deshaun Jackson. He's going to give you this week and really give you wide receiver top 5 numbers in those weeks and matchups. And to me, that's absolutely worth it here in round 8.
Deshaun Jackson's one of the best deep threats of the modern era and had not lost a step as of last year. And, he's never played with the quarterback but in an offense.
I will say this, Deshaun Jackson moving to Philadelphia is all the more reason why I want Carson Wentz. He's got all the toys.
Yep.
Totally. Okay, right after Deshaun Jackson, I believe it was Kyle Smith took Cam Newton. Sterling Shepard went to Scott Davey. That turns us to Andy Behrens.
Yeah, we're running low on running backs that I feel pretty good about. Again, I filled in the position already, but I'm looking at bench potential right now. I'm going to take Royce Freeman Of course, I just recognized that I'm having about the most Brad Evans draft of all time. I've got David Montgomery.
Never want to do that.
Now I've got Royce. These are his guys. No, you never want to do that. That is not a path that you generally want to follow. But I am a believer in Freeman. Of course, we have a situation where the coaching staff, Philip Lindsay was great last year. He was absolutely great. But the new coaching staff, he doesn't necessarily have the same equity with them. Freeman has been really buzzy, really good all offseason. This is a good player in college, too. So I have no problem believing that this is going to be a straight-up tandem. I think Freeman really benefits as well from the Theo Riddick injury, right? That was a huge curveball that the Broncos threw us. Now we don't really have to worry about that for about half the season. I think Freeman is in a great spot here. And of course, if there's an injury to Lindsay, he becomes a full workload guy.
Andy, not to turn this right back around you and show your hand at all, but I see 4 running backs, I see 4 wide receivers, I see 0 tight ends. Nervous?
Well, if you saw my queue, yeah, you would say that I'm petrified because it's full of really sketchy tight ends right now. That is a small concern. Again, I'd been eyeing Vance McDonald, thought I might get him. Had even some really solid prepared remarks, I think, on Vance McDonald, so that was brutal. But so yeah, this is not where you want to be at the tight end position, and I think once we get outside the top 6, I would say the top 6 or 7, I really do start to worry. So I'm going to take a couple of swings at the position, probably draft it at the very end instead of trying to go after it, chasing the number 9 guy at the spot.
Good luck for that. I'm sure you feel great about that. Okay, after Andy took Royce Freeman, Ryan has selected Rashad Penny, Golden Tate went to Matt Martin, Ronald Jones to Eric. Patrick, that turns us to you to close out round 8.
Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to talk about Ronald Jones for the 20th time this summer because I've talked about him way too much. I'm going to make the non-sharp pick here. I'm going to take a quarterback 3 or 4 rounds probably earlier than anyone else at the table. I'm going to take Kyler Murray. He's kind of like the one player I really want to have this year. I think he's like this year's Mahomes, where someone from down the board is going to come up, and even if you're kind of overdrafting him relative to the quarterback, yes.
This guy?
Yes. Kyler Murray he's a special prospect.
Yep.
He is probably, I would say, the best dual threat prospect to enter the NFL since Michael Vick, at least since Robert Griffin III. And you're talking about a guy who's going to be in as last year at Oklahoma, a 70% passer and a 1,000-yard rusher. And we all know dual threat quarterbacks are kind of like life hacks, the Konami code in fantasy football. Very rarely do you have a dual threat quarterback in a high volume passing offense. And that's what Kyler Murray is going to be in. So he has the rushing, significantly increasing his floor and his ceiling, and is still going to have passing volume. I just think he's a rare fantasy football prospect.
Pat, you might have done a great job with this pick because, Chris Sims over there, I know just on the recent episode of the Chris Sims of Button podcast, talked all about the rookie quarterbacks.
Yes, and you guys ruined our thunder here. We were going to say, where's Kyler Murray? When's he going to go? But Patrick, you made a lot of great points there. And hey, let's take this into account too, the politics of football and everything that goes. Cliff Kingsbury, this is his guy. The organization let go a top 10 pick to get the number 1 pick in Kyler Murray. They're invested in him. I just would be shocked if he doesn't have a huge statistical year, let alone what Patrick brought up, his rushing. It is the most dangerous runner we've seen since Michael Vick, and I can't believe I'm saying that the year after Lamar Jackson, who I thought was really dangerous. But Murray's on a different level on what he can do.
Conventional wisdom says it's sort of insane to have a rookie be your top fantasy quarterback. Just, there's going to be inconsistency. They're going to struggle. I think it's a different story here, though.
He's a rookie, but it's the same system he's been running all through college. It's very rare where the rest of the team's looking at the rookie and going, hey, get us lined up, get us in the right check. So he's almost empowered like a veteran. Hey, other ones, I liked Austin Eckler and Lamar Miller there in that round, too. But, yeah, the Kyler Murray, he's got superstar written all over him.
And what you said about running his college system in the NFL, Larry Fitzgerald said, I've never had a rookie quarterback, telling me where to line up.
Yeah.
And Kyler Murray has been doing it. And the final point of Kyler Murray, even if he struggles in real life, just the nature of this offense, it's going to be very hard for him to struggle in fantasy football. Speaking
of the Chris Sims Unbuttoned podcast, a new episode is up now. It's breaking down preseason Week 1 film with a heavy focus on the rookie quarterbacks. Also some Antonio Brown Crazyville power ranks, as well as one-on-one interviews with Odell Beckham Jr. and Big Ben Roethlisberger up right now on YouTube.com/NBC Sports. Pat, we're starting round 9 with you selecting Geronimo Allison.
took Geronimo Allison. He's going to be the Packers slot receiver. Pro Football Focus's Scott Barrett tweeted recently that 25% of Aaron Rodgers' career targets have gone to the slot. Let's think Geronimo Allison flashed a lot early in the season last year before injury kind of derailed his season. He's another guy to a lesser degree than Robbie Anderson. But I said Robbie Anderson's kind of always been on the brink of like breaking out, and I think Geronimo Allison's another one of those guys. He's finally healthy, has the right role, offense on the rebound, and I was happy to get him in round 9.
After Pat selected Geronimo Allison, Eric took David Njoku, another tight end off the board. Baker Mayfield went to Matt Martin. Kiki Cutie went to Ryan. That means Andy Behrens is up once again here with the 5th pick in round 9.
Yeah, I was going to select Baker Mayfield. He was sliding. He went off the board. You look at the quarterback position right now, it's just absolutely loaded. I think Scott said it earlier. It is about as deep as the position has ever looked on paper. You know, I've got Tom Brady like number 20, number 21 in my quarterback ranks. There's still a bunch of Hall of Famers out there. So as tempting as it is to go quarterback right now, there's like 10 that I feel okay about rostering. So I went with the ultimate anti-expert pick, took Eric Ebron. You guys shamed me.
I got your head, huh, Andy?
Tight end. He is perhaps the clearest, I guess he's right there with Mike Williams, the clearest regression candidate in fantasy football, right? It was 66 catches, 13 touchdowns. No, he's not going to do that. Yes, we have to worry about Andrew Luck's injury, but he is still going to score, right? Like he can give away half those touchdowns and still finish as a top 8 fantasy tight end.
Scott Davey, after Eric Ebron was selection for Andy, selected Lamar Jackson. Then Matt Breida went off the board to Kyle Smith. That means John Daigle, you're back up.
You got to go ways down the queue here to find him, but that's only because he hasn't been properly adjusted yet. Because Duke Johnson is in line for a career high in slot routes, and Duke Johnson has a direct path to RB1. So that is my current pick right now. Big believer that he's going to take over that offense, and even if he doesn't, the injury history between Fuller and QT helped Duke Johnson because they have to get him on the field, especially as a pass catcher where we can bank on extra fantasy points.
And, I mean, they both won the same round in terms of Kiki Cutie and Duke Johnson. We know Kiki Cutie just got another injury, not his first of his career, and just a short career. So you're expecting maybe a little tick up here with how much time that Kiki Cutie might miss.
Absolutely.
With Duke Johnson, I should say. A few other names that are interesting here. I mean, Lamar Jackson went off the board. Lamar Jackson is someone that here in the 9th round might go, depending on expert leagues, round 10, round 11, round 12. Scott, would you feel comfortable with Lamar Jackson as your starting quarterback?
I would. I'd probably want a pretty good backup in case it went sideways, but I think they're going to run the ball as much as they did last year. You know, Pat talked earlier about the Konami code. A shout out to Rich Rebar, our friend in the industry. It's just unfair. It's just algebra. It's so much easier to score fantasy points on the ground for a quarterback as long as he can stay healthy. And if Jackson just gets a little bit better with his pocket decisions, you could be having a league difference maker in the 9th round.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Andrew Luck is a great pick. But Lamar Jackson's a very, very solid pick.
I also want to focus on Matt Breida, a great 9th round pick. If you can get Matt Breida in the 9th round, go grab him.
And we talked about with Tevin Coleman, right? Like there was at the start of training camp this idea that the 49ers backfield was going to be Matt Breida, Tevin Coleman, and Jerick McKinnon. It's kind of now being funneled down to 2 running backs in that offense, and an offense that we try to look at through breakthrough offenses, maybe stack them in season long. The 49ers are definitely one of those to me this year heading into 2019.
Breida's efficiency was through the roof last year as a runner, as a receiver, and again, in that Kyle Shanahan offense. The key here is to not see McKinnon when you look at the depth chart. I'm not even sure he's going to make the team.
Right. After Daigle selected Duke Johnson, we had Michael Epstein selecting Devin Funchess, John Brown John Brown went to, he went to Michael Epstein, then Eugene at Cortland Sutton, Scott Pianowski. Your turn.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad I have my receivers so that those picks didn't affect me. I don't want to pay early for a quarterback, but I want to take a quarterback who could theoretically be the MVP. And Carson Wentz probably had an MVP season before he got hurt a couple of years ago. Now that's in his rearview mirror. We talked about Jackson coming over there. They've added Sanders. Maybe Dallas Goedert's ready for a step forward. He's a little dinged up right now. I think Carson Wentz is a great sleeper pick for MVP. All the toys are there. I love a Doug Peterson offense. Around round 9, round 10 is when I like to take my quarterback. Give me Carson Wentz.
And we've talked about it before, right? Like rather than maybe pick out 1 or 2 of the players that we like in an offense, why not just select the quarterback that is at the helm of all of it? Because if the other people put up points, the quarterback is putting up
points.
Right.
If we want all these other Eagles players for different reasons, why shouldn't we want Carson Wentz?
Let's send it over to the side desk. Chris Sims and Matt Strout.
Did any of you guys have Matt Breida on a fantasy team last year? I'm pretty sure he sprained an ankle as he came off the draft board.
I think he set a record for most times being listed as doubtful on Thursday than starting on Sunday.
Also,
Yeah,
in-game
seriously.
exits, so maddening. We saw 2 Cleveland Browns, though, Chris, go back-to-back there. David Njoku, Baker Mayfield. How much upside do you think there is for those two in the Cleveland passing game?
Well, that offense in general has a chance to explode this year. I mean, be one of the top offenses in football. Njoku is interesting to me because I think he really will be a big beneficiary from the Odell Beckham Jr. effect, where he gets a lot of coverage, and then Jarvis Landry and Njoku are going to work the middle of the field. I was at practice out there in Cleveland last week. Man, Baker was feeding Njoku the ball. And, of course, hey, I know maybe it's early to take quarterbacks, whatever it is, but Baker Mayfield would be one of those other guys on a short list where I'd say, man, the Browns go to the playoffs. Most likely they're going to put up a lot of big numbers, and he could be on that Carson Wentz short list of MVP candidates when all said and done.
So the 9th quarterback off the board in this draft, possible steal. And Njoku just has the athletic ability. I mean,
He's a featured tight end. Exactly right. I mean, he is big. He's got an unbelievable catch radius, and he can outrun people with pure speed too. And he's young. He's really just learning his way in the NFL. I think this is a year he explodes. But really, I thought that was a good round by everybody, guys.
Chris, I thought it was super cool how the Browns opened the preseason because they basically started with a 2-minute drill because they knew that their starters wanted to practice that, and then they went and scored touchdowns super easily.
And to tell the other team, at first I was like, it's kind of cheap. They're going 2-minute, in the first preseason game. But then we find out after the fact that they told the Redskins, they let them know. There is a vibe there in Cleveland that I have never felt before being there at training camp. And a lot of it is because of Baker Mayfield. And it's not just because of what he does on the field. He is just a guy that is a polarizing leader, talent, always conversing with guys. As soon as he's done with the rep, he's talking to David Njoku, talking to Odell Beckham Jr. With the Nick Chubb factor, there's just a lot to like in that Cleveland offense.
Adjust the rankings accordingly. Scott Pianowski, you opened up round 10 with a rookie running back in Devin Singletary, who loaded backfield, crowded backfield. I'm sure there's a difference in those two terms.
I'm just looking for upside now. We're in the 10th round. You're just swinging for theoretical upside. I think he could be their featured back. He's already getting some first-team reps. Baker Mayfield, remember, didn't get any first-team reps last summer. Nice job, Hugh Jackson. The Bills get it. They're trying to get Singletary acclimated. I'm not sure how much longer LaShawn McCoy is here. Yeah, Buffalo's offense isn't a great offense to get invested in, but if there's one back to have here, I think it's Singletary.
I mean, it kind of feels like we've hit a cliff here, guys, a little bit, because Devin Singletary, we don't know what the usage is going to be. Then Eugene and Alma selected Jalen Samuels, who more of an H-back than a running back, even though he's better than Benny Snell, but we talked about at the top with James Conner not giving up touches. Emmanuel Sanders here with Michael Epstein has just a lot of injuries, had another surgery that we didn't know about this offseason until today. Like, again, it's kind of at this point, Pat, where you're drafting more upside than anything else?
Yeah, I mean, we're near the dart throwing portion of the draft, and upside wins leagues. I mean, you're not going to lose a draft with your 10th or 11th round pick. You're probably not going to win a draft with your 10th or 11th round pick either, but there's a greater chance you win it than lose it, and you shoot for upside. So
you're going to drop a lot of these guys anyway. Okay, so
I already
it's all
dropped
about their
my 9th round
ceiling
pick.
now. Floor doesn't matter really at all. Take the guy who you think could break out if just one thing falls their way.
Before Junior selects, and he's about to, I kind of want to go back to a pick made in round 9, as you can see behind me, that I believe this was Michael selecting, and that's John Brown. I mean, John Brown with Josh Allen is the perfect combination in terms of one of the best, to me, deep ball receivers down the field, who was fantastic to open the season with Joe Flacco. Then his points completely tailed off when Lamar Jackson took over. And now we know that Josh Allen is running from the pocket on passing plays or throwing it vertical in this offense, and I think John Brown's a great fit there.
And Robert Foster, for whatever reason, has moved down the depth chart, right? So if you're going to draft any receiver, maybe I'd take Zay Jones in the last round, but Brown should be the targeted guy if you want a Buffalo wideout. And I know Josh Allen's a wild card, but with Foster moving down, I think that has to move Brown up.
Junior selected Anthony Miller. That means we turn to John Daigle here in round 10.
I obviously need to focus on wide receiver help since Deshaun Jackson, although I like him, is my number 3 right now. So I am looking at Dante Moncrief, the true number 2 receiver for the Steelers. As we've talked about, over 200 targets available from this offense last year due to Antonio Brown leaving. Dante Moncrief is the guy that slides right in. He's outperformed James Washington. He's outperformed Deontay Johnson. And James Washington, he looked great against second stringers, but that's the guy that's actually been behind in camp, even in 3 wide sets. Like, Dante Moncrief has already developed a rapport with Ben Roethlisberger, according to reporters. That is the number 2 receiver on this offense.
Andy Behrens is on the clock after Russell Wilson goes off the board. Marquez, Valdez, Scantling also goes to Scott Davey. Andy, take it away.
Yeah, we talked last round about the depth of the quarterback position. This is just going to prove the point. I'm going to take Drew Brees in the 10th round of this thing. Drew Brees has been a top 10 fantasy quarterback for 14 straight years. I know that there's some concern about his decline in volume last season. I got a couple of reasons for that. One, he was a victim of his own efficiency, right? He completed almost 75% of his passes. That was an NFL single-season record. Actually averaged more completions per week than Patrick Mahomes, than Tom Brady, than Aaron Rodgers. Had he needed to play in Week 17, he would have finished the season right around 520 attempts, probably 4,200, 4,300 yards, and then we're not worrying about any of that. Then he's back in the MVP discussion. I think he's an obvious play here and a clear candidate to finish, again, for the 15th straight season as a top 10 fantasy QB.
Yeah, Andy, you said it, 14 straight seasons as a top 10 quarterback. Roto-Pat still looks 14. So, I mean, at least we have that going on.
Well, you know what, though? 14 straight years as a top 10 quarterback, but the last 2 years, quarterback 8, quarterback 9. That's probably the ceiling for Brees right now. The volume has gone down the last 2 seasons.
It kind of speaks, again, just to how deep this quarterback position is and why you are perfectly cool waiting until this area of the draft, because we had Baker, Lamar, Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson, Drew Brees here in 9 and 10, and we still have some great quarterbacks on the board. And
you're going to get a Kyle Shanahan quarterback, and Jimmy Garoppolo is going to go undrafted.
Right.
So that's how deep quarterback is.
So if there's one thing we can stress, well, 2, it's 1, don't let auto pick happen, and also just wait on quarterback this year in drafts. Pat, you're up here to close out round 10.
I am. I'm a little. I'm going to take a great fantasy football strategy and draft a player that might not even be good, but it's the 10th round.
It's always exactly what you want to say before you make a selection.
I'm going to draft Kalen Ballage just because he could have a starting job. No clue if he's actually good. Was really hyped last offseason also, and then was a ghost during the season. Really hyped this offseason, off to kind of a shaky summer start. But if you have a shot at a starting job, you're a good pick in the 10th round.
And Kenyon Drake hasn't been a featured back since high school, so maybe it's
neither
just
has
off the cards for
Ballage,
Drake.
but yeah, it's just a weird backfield, and it's a new coach. It's just a weird situation, but if you have a shot at the starting job in the 10th round,
At worst, he's literally in a timeshare for starting reps. At worst.
yes.
Let's turn it over to Matt Stroup and Chris Sims.
Drew Brees and Russell Wilson used to be like exciting, explosive fantasy quarterbacks. Brees is 40, Wilson's 30. They've kind of settled into good but boring, that range. Do you think both can have strong years this year? Any reason for doubt?
I don't have any doubt with either one, really. I mean, I have a little more doubt with Drew Brees than Russell Wilson. I mean, Russell Wilson's in the prime of his career. I think they've got their offensive line issues figured out. Now, you have to worry about them running the ball maybe a little too much to take away points, but then the addition of DK Metcalf, who they're, just loving out there. I think Russell Wilson, is going to be up there right where you've seen him the last few years. 32, 35 touchdown passes, 7, 8 interceptions, right around there. Now, Drew Brees, do you get points for completion percentage in fantasy?
No, unfortunately
no.
Okay.
He'll probably set the record again this year.
Well, yeah, he might, but I don't always look at that as a good thing too either, because then what he became last year was one of the shortest throwers in all of football.
He was throwing deep
Charlie
less than ever.
check-down-ish, right? And that bothers me. And then when you want to throw deep passes, they're bringing in another quarterback in Taysom Hill to throw deep ones. So, hey, Drew Brees is still going to put up good numbers, but I certainly think we're getting towards the end
Chris,
here.
don't you think that Traquan Smith entering year 2, Jared Cook is one of the best vertical tight ends, maybe that can open it up a little bit more as ceiling downfield?
No doubt. And I do think the big thing with the Jared Cook thing, especially if it's Drew Brees, no more bombs away outside, no 20-yard comebacks. That's not going to be his cup of tea at this point. Work in the middle of the field, Kamara, Michael Thomas, Jared Cook, I think is right in his wheelhouse, and that's where he'll make his money and make a lot of yards this year.
I do want to talk about the 2 big elephants in the room. That is the championship belt. That is that big trophy. You invested the time. Shouldn't your league reward you with a fantasy football trophy that will make your fellow competitors jealous? Go to trophysmack.com/RotoWorld now. When you use promo code RotoWorld, you'll also get a $59 championship ring free with any purchase of a trophy or belt. Let's now take a look at Pat's team so far in this draft. Patrick Doherty, you started off again. Christian McCaffrey, Aaron Jones, Adam Thielen, Mark Ingram, Robbie Anderson, Will Fuller, Geronimo Allison later on with Kyler Murray, your quarterback, Vance McDonald at tight end, and Kalen Ballage. Pat, how do you feel?
Feel good. I got to say, Chris Sims, he's only known Andy Behrens with 90 minutes, but he already knows that you got to crush him. And he came out with that Drew Brees pick. And so Chris is just.
I didn't mean to be
Chris, no, I'd say Chris is just a real professional, and he knew what to do with that. My team, it's a PPR league. One of the secrets to PPR is kind of, well, of course, getting good players, but you want to bank kind of cheap receptions. I didn't really do that at the wide receiver position. Kind of hoping I'm doing it at running back, where I have the premier pass-catching back in Christian McCaffrey. I think Aaron Jones' receptions are going to shoot up. I think Mark Ingram's receptions are going to shoot back up. I usually go upside. I've got an upside roster. I'm happy with my team.
Let's go to Andy Behrens' team now, who, again, just to remind you, started off with DeAndre Hopkins, Dalvin Cook, Devontae Freeman, David Montgomery as his trio at running back. Andy, just looking at your whole roster right there, how do you feel about it?
I feel like it's basically been a clinic, start to finish. Hopkins was a guy that I knew I was just going to take at the top, right? I figured that was going to come down to either David Johnson or DeAndre Hopkins, and that was going to set the table for the next 4 or 5 picks. I got a bunch of guys that I tend to value above ADP, and I think it was Josh, you said it earlier. You reach a certain point in the draft, and for me, that's like the second round, and you have to start worrying about like what you project and who you think the great players are going to be, and worry a lot less about what the room is going to do, right? So Curtis Samuel's one of my guys. I got him. Freeman, definitely one of my guys. I've got him as a top 10 running back this year. I don't see a lot of that so far. So feel pretty good about the backfield. Again, I feel really good about Drew Brees because no, completion percentage doesn't win your league. Touchdowns do win your league. He's basically a lock for 32 to 35 TDs.
John Daigle, we're through 10 rounds. Other than the auto-drafted quarterback pick, how do you feel about your squad?
Yeah, I mean, I am happy with the receivers. I'm still going to look to build as we move along here. But the running backs, although people may be disgusted, because like I said, it's recency bias, like I'm very happy. Those are guys I'm truly betting on in all of my own personal best ball drafts. I've done a few football guys championship drafts, and I'm heavy on these ownerships. So no, I think it's going quite well.
I mean, you're not
and trust me, I'd be honest if I hated my team. Andrew Luck pick, I wish it may have not happened, but it's fine.
You're not going to get, no team in the league can have a better number 2 running back than Leonard Fournette. So, yeah.
That's true.
Scott Pianowski, again, 10 rounds through this draft. What's kind of stood out and maybe surprised you about your squad?
Well, I'm just glad I like my running backs. I think if you like your running backs, it sets up the draft for you. And then the question was, could I make up enough ground at receiver? And I think I have a nice mix of upside and floor. Godwin's an upside pick. Woods is a floor pick. Kirk is an upside pick. Because Williams has such a high touchdown projection, I actually think he's a floor pick. And I invested in offenses I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of Bruce Arians' offense. I want to be invested in Sean McVay. So, and of course, everybody loves the Browns this year. So I think I bet on a lot of good offenses, and I have a very balanced roster.
Patrick Doherty kicks us off here in round 11.
I just took Michael Gallup, the Cowboys' number 2 receiver. As a guy last year we kind of thought was going to, right off the bat, have a super high volume role. Didn't really come to fruition, but he seems like just like a textbook post-hype sophomore, basically. Cowboys have been talking him up all summer. Dak Prescott has called him a beast. He's locked in as the number 2 receiver. In theory, there's more target competition, but really it's a decrepit Randall Cobb in the slot. It's a decrepit Jason Witten at tight end. We have should be an improved play calling off. Kellen Moore is kind of.
We don't know anything about him,
coach speak, but
coaches like him.
And Kellen Moore said the things like, as a smart football observer, you want to hear. He's like kind of talking the more modern offensive talk, and I think he knows what he's doing as offensive coordinator. And I think Gallup could be, just, to me, a textbook post-hype sophomore.
And Gallup didn't lose his downfield role when Amari Cooper joined the team. Gallup just finished just a hair over 100 air yards fewer than Cooper did as the deep threat. So, they will still use Gallup in that downfield role.
Again, anytime you see a young receiver who's not over his head his rookie year, I think that really portends to a possible year 2 or year 3 breakout.
Before we get to Andy here, I want to talk about Eric's pick, because right after Pat took Michael Gallup, he took Peyton Barber. And we talk all about 200 touches, 250 touches, and we want that. In round 11, I know Peyton Barber might not be good at football, but he might get a lot of good touches.
Maybe he doesn't have to be good. So much of life is just showing up, and he may be the starting back in an Arians offense. I mean, again, maybe he'll average 3.6, 3.7 yards a carry, but if the volume is there, we really don't care. It's a great pick now.
And what I love about Eric is that 2 or 3 rounds beforehand, he took Ronald Jones. So no matter who the starting back is going to be in the Bucs and the offense that we want to have, he has it here with Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones. Andy Behrens, you're on the clock.
Yeah, I just want to say one of my favorite parts of any draft is when somebody else takes Peyton Barber, because I didn't really want to get saddled with him, and I was looking at him pretty hard right here.
He's the new Frank Gore.
3.8 yards per touch last year. Yeah, maybe. He's about 20, 25 years away from being Frank Gore, but sure, yeah, I can see it. I'm going to take Jamison Crowder here. I basically take him every year, and someday I'm going to be right about him. We're going to get that 90-catch season. Just a fun, sneaky addition to that Jets offense. We saw him find the end zone in the preseason opener for that team. He just needs to stay healthy. I feel like there's going to be a year when he stays healthy, delivers us 80, 85 receptions. I think he's a great play in this format.
Are you at all nervous, Andy, about being kind of excited about so many different Jets because it's under Adam Gase? Because, I mean, it's Le'Veon Bell, who we're taking in round 1 and round 2. We selected Robbie Anderson a little bit earlier. And you have Jamison Crowder, who's a slot receiver, again, in an offense that last year Adam Gase had the fewest run plays on offense in the entire league.
Yeah, I feel like the key here is the quarterback. And if I wasn't really a believer in Sam Darnold, and I think he's going to be good down the road, I think it probably happens this year. Strong candidate to make one of those leaps like we saw with Wentz, with Goff in year 2. I don't know that it's going to be like that. I don't know that he's going to throw 30 touchdown passes, but I'm a big believer in his talent. So I feel a lot better about some of the secondary receivers here.
After Andy selected Jamison Crowder, Scott Davey selected Nyheim Hines, DK Metcalf went to Cal Smith. That means John Daigle's on the clock.
So I'm looking, ideally I would have picked Deshaun Hamilton here, but with my receiver set and at this point of the draft, Hamilton is a floor play. Like, he's not a ceiling guy at all. So I am instead pivoting to Marquise Goodwin, who, again, the wide receiver battle in San Francisco sort of leans itself to Marquise Goodwin having a role and having that explosive role. Like, he'll still be on limited reps, but this is the guy, especially like in best ball, like this is the 100-yard touchdown guy that they'll put on the field in a certain way and make sure to get him the ball over the top of the secondary. And right now I need to bank on that ceiling.
Is he more interested in the 2020 Olympics than he is the 2019 NFL season?
It's a terrific question.
That's my question.
And it's also someone that we were super amped and excited in 2018 to have on our rosters. And now it's just more crowded. Like, I was a big advocate of Dante Pettis. I'm kind of tapering that off now, and I would still take him in round 9, but he went round 7 here. And then also you have rookies in Deebo Samuel and Jalen Hurd who are thrown in there as well.
Yes, and it actually helps. So this is another draft strategy for everyone. You want to stack offenses as well. And so it kind of helps that I already have Tevin Coleman and George Kittle. So I'm just still building on that 49ers offense to hopefully create a high ceiling for myself in the weeks they go off. So that sort of made me lean that direction as well.
Pat, after Daigle took Marquise Goodwin, Junior selected a defense in round 11. Talk to me.
Well, you know, the one constant of historically good defenses is that they regress the following season. The Bears, and plus they've lost their defensive coordinator. One of the
Bears defense, I should say.
Yeah, one of the greatest defensive coordinators in NFL history. Vic Fangio is gone. We know they won't be as good as they were last year, and it's every year there's maybe 2 to 3 defenses that you actually will start every week that you won't drop when it's their bye week, and the Bears have a good shot at being one of those defenses still this year. But yeah, I probably won't even draft a defense today.
And just to put in perspective, this time last year, I don't believe Khalil Mack was even on the Chicago Bears.
He was not.
So like, we didn't even know who was going to be the top defense for that entire season so far. After Junior selected the Bears defense, Damon Harris went to Michael Epstein. Eugene and Alma selected Tyrell Williams. Scott, take it away.
Yeah, you know, John mentioned Sean Hamilton and didn't go that way. And I know maybe he's a 4 pick, but 25 catches the last 4 weeks of the season last year. I think Sanders is a guy I can't count on at this point of his career with all the surgeries and stuff like that. Cortland Sutton had a very uneven rookie season. Look, Joe Flacco, I mean, not a quarterback I'm excited to get tied to, and that's what I'm doing with Hamilton, but I think he's going to catch 75 balls.
Speaking of the Broncos, and I know I'm not setting him up for this necessarily, but I will say, Chris Sims, Drew Lock looked a little bit better in the second preseason game.
A little bit better, definitely did. He's still not the Drew Lock I was expecting to see, but threw the ball with more confidence. He's young. He's learning. He wasn't coached a whole lot last year at Missouri, too. He just played by the seat of his pants, so we'll see where that goes. But that Broncos offense, I think, will be better in general.
Meanwhile, another offense we have question marks about, Adam Gase offense. I personally get anxiety when I hear those words, Adam Gase offense. But Jamison Crowder is actually a pick that you like. Tell me why.
I do. First off, I understand the concerns about Adam Gase and the optics of everything there. But really, Andy, I think this is a great pick. This Adam Gase offense, I don't think it's going to be as slow-paced as everyone has seen in years past. He's not managing Jay Cutler or Ryan Tannehill. This is more like, whoa, I got Sam Darnold, and I haven't had a guy like this since I had Peyton Manning in Denver, where I think we're going to see an uptick in what he does. He knows how to get the slot receiver the ball. Albert Wilson last year, Jakeem Grant, I think you'll see that. And John, I like that Marquise Goodwin pick.
Yeah.
He's going to be their go-to deep guy. He's going to have a specific role for that offense. I think the points you made there were very real.
Did I ever tell you how much I like Chris?
Well, when Chris Sims talks about the San Francisco 49ers, I think I might want to pay attention to that as well. Scott Pianowski, you're kicking us off here in round 12.
I can't believe it. I did the Daigle.
Did you really?
I waited too long. I wanted to take LaShawn
Experts
McCoy.
table, right here.
I wanted to take LaShawn McCoy, and then I was thinking about Deebo Samuel, and I've been auto-picked into Phillip Rivers. The only thing good about this pick is I do like that Chargers offense. At least I'm blocking one of the people who waited a quarterback.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen? Every week somebody asks me, who do I start among these two great quarterbacks? I say try to trade one. Nobody wants to trade for one. I just got Daigled.
Well, an hour and 37
Never
minutes
go
ago, I announced these guys as experts. It might be experts now. So you're the first person to take two quarterbacks in a real-life draft, and one that you intended to select. Maybe wait until round 15, 16?
I wasn't going to take a second quarterback at all. But I was going to take LaShawn McCoy and get both Buffalo backs. I'm not a big fan of handcuffing, but I'm thinking maybe one guy would be clearly established as a starter before opening day. Yeah, this is an embarrassing rookie mistake. Whatever you guys are paying me, cut it in half.
Can we? It gives us a little bit of a chance, though, to talk about this Chargers offense. And there have been times in the last few years where they haven't had Melvin Gordon. And I know preseason is a small sample size, but we have seen regular season time with Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson. Plus, you add in Hunter Henry now, who's probably the best receiving tight end he's had in quite some time since he's been healthy. I'm amped up to see this Chargers offense, especially maybe with a rebounded defense as well, Daigle.
That's why I think Austin Eckler was such a good pick in the 5th round, especially in that 5th, 6th round turn, because he has an out whether Melvin Gordon plays or not. They've already discussed scaling back Melvin Gordon's reps. If Melvin Gordon's traded or holds out the entire year, Austin Eckler is the true, strong RB1 there. And even if he doesn't, if he signs and returns, Eckler is so efficient. So if we hand him even a few more targets per game, he's such a good backup to have, especially in that 5th
And you went
round.
in the 8th round, which is tremendous
I
value.
will say, if you're going to true the Chargers offense in fantasy, Phillip Rivers used to be a little like Matthew Stafford or Kirk Cousins in that he was every year 600 attempts, like Boffo attempts. And last year, they kind of transitioned to a more like super high efficiency, like really high efficient offense, and it kind of limits the fantasy points that go around.
I will say this, though. If Gordon doesn't come back,
it could be back to
that's going to help.
Yeah,
that's going to help Rivers.
Scott, I'm not sure if you get excited about the players that went after you. Jamal Williams, the running back with the Packers, then two tight ends, and Jordan Reed and Delaney Walker. That brings us over here to John Daigle. Excuse me.
Speaking of efficiency, we got to get a little frisky here because it's that time. It's that time because there is a man who scored 25 all-purpose touchdowns in his 3 years in Memphis. There is a man who has a direct path to being a #1 running back. And this is not a reach, what you just say off camera. This is absolutely not a reach. This is about the time that Tony Pollard should be getting drafted because he's the Cowboys' #1 if Zeke holds out. And even if Zeke doesn't hold out and he comes back, Tony Pollard will be used in what we expect to be Kellen Moore's more progressive offense. Like, Tony Pollard is honestly the cheat code of 2019 fantasy football drafts.
You have Zeke. Do you feel like Pollard is a mandatory pick, and when do you take him?
I have been taking Pollard everywhere anyways, around the 14th round, especially in best ball drafts. I think Pollard should go in every fantasy football draft, no matter the scoring format, because he is that good and he'll be utilized as that in the Cowboys offense.
And maybe take him a round or two earlier because you have Elliott.
Elliott did help, yes. Elliott helped me out a little bit.
Someone doesn't respect web back Tavon Austin.
Yeah, don't tell
right.
Stephen Jones when Tavon's going to get 20 to 25 touches. Andy Behrens, you're up again after Justin Jackson went, who we just mentioned, Chris Thompson as well. Andy, who are you going to select?
Yeah, I'm going to snag a guy that Scott already mentioned. I'm looking at Deebo Samuel. We're at a point in a draft where you have to start asking, what does it look like if everything goes right for this guy? And I think there is clearly a starting opportunity there. I will say, I think a lot of the coverage and a lot of the noise around Dante Pettis so far has been somewhat motivational. It's pretty clear that they want him to step up and be a #1 receiver.
I really hope you're right. I have a lot
Yeah,
of
I'm kind of talking myself
shares.
into that too because I have some Pettis shares as well. So I'll admit that I'm a little bit talking myself into that. But you just read the actual quotes from Shanahan, from people around the team. They still seem to think that Dante Pettis is the #1. But they also invested a second-round pick in Deebo Samuel, a talented player. It is wide open competition there.
Andy, 1 week ago, would you have made this selection in the 12th round, or did his preseason performance give you kind of a little more confidence in making it?
I try not to, if I were really into preseason performance, maybe it would have been James Washington here, right? Like you can't get too tilted by specific preseason performances. More, it's just the fact that it is absolutely wide open for targets beyond George Kittle in San Francisco's offense.
Love it.
Preseason performance. That's why Josh took Amir Abdullah 2 rounds ago. You're not even in the draft.
Just from his one preseason run 5 years ago, he's still up there.
Still made quite an impression, yeah.
Speaking of James Washington, he just went off the board. I mean, it is interesting. I don't even know where he went 2 rounds before this, but James Washington, Dante Moncrief, I'll even throw Deontay Johnson in there as a possible name because we talked about the 240 targets on the table. One of those players is going to see maybe 75, 80 targets this season, and we just don't know which one it is right now. I also want to throw in Adam Humphries, who I think saw 17 targets in that first drive of the Tennessee Titans in that first preseason
It's about
game.
that number, yeah.
LaShawn McCoy, and then Pat, you close us out here in round 12.
I'm gonna go with one of those kind of like splash flash rookie picks. I think I'm gonna go Andy Isabella, who I've kind of like gone in and out of like reaching for this summer. But as a rookie, he just checks all the boxes to me. Elite athlete, elite college production, draft capital. They invested a second-round pick in him, and then should be in 3 receiver sets and an extremely high volume offense. And to me, it's like, what more could I want at this stage of the draft? So. And
Chris and Matt, I think that, and we've talked about this before, Chris, Cardinals most likely lead the league in 4 wide receiver sets this year.
I would expect so. I mean, we've never seen Cliff Kingsbury get in like ground and pound mode, so I don't know if that's in his DNA. I'm sure he'll break it out a little bit, but yeah, it's going to be about spreading the field. Even in the run game, I think you'll see the same type of formations from that offense.
I don't want it to go unnoticed from that round that Pianowski used Daigle as a verb, and I encourage everyone when they auto-draft in your home league, wherever, call it a Daigle.
Call it a Daigle, like
good.
Kingpin. Yeah, you're Kingpin reference? Yes, very good, very good. You're very creative.
DK Metcalf was a guy you shouted out earlier. Deebo Samuel, another guy who caught your attention. What's to like about those 2 receivers?
Yeah, well, round 11, DK Metcalf, Russell Wilson, the Seattle offense, they're not necessarily into like dink and dunk. It's going to be, we got one-on-one outside. Russell Wilson, a great deep ball thrower. DK Metcalf, one of the freakiest guys to come out in the draft. Deebo Samuel is really interesting because, of course, a second-round pick. He could be the Mohamed Sanu for Kyle Shanahan, who he had in the Atlanta Falcons a few years ago. The only thing that worries me about Deebo Samuel is Jalen Hurd, who's also the similar type of guy there. But I think like Deebo will be used as a weapon too, almost a guy who lines up a slot receiver, outside, maybe at running back, speed sweeps we saw from last week. So I like both of those picks.
Appreciate it, guys. Pat, you opened with another rookie wide receiver, back-to-back, Andy Isabella, and now Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, he's been having a buzzy camp. He's got some real-life draft pedigree, too. Top 80 pick. Someone who's supposedly guaranteed an early season role on offense. Profile is kind of like Stephon Diggs-ish. Could be like that kind of playmaker. Probably won't be as a rookie, of course. But I'm just basically betting on upside here. It's probably someone I'll be dropping in the first 2 to 3 weeks of the season. But there are definitely targets and snaps there for the taking in the Redskins receiver.
We really have not talked at all about the Redskins offense or players in this draft at all. I mean, that means that none of you have drafted them. That might be a problem because this is a Colt McCoy run offense, a Dwayne Haskins run offense with maybe a 24-year-old rookie at wide receiver being their leading target guy. Jordan Reed kind of, Scott, to me, is the only one that I'm a little bit excited for. But I've been down that path quite a bit in the last few years as well.
I have them as the weakest fantasy team in the NFL right now. Just guys, your Reed's been hurt too many times. We don't know who the quarterback is. A lot of the players, even that you like, have uncertainty tied to them. I looked at Adrian Peterson for a second. I started to get the shakes.
After Pat took Terry McLaurin, Jacksonville's defense went off the board. Baltimore's defense went off the board. And then rookie running back with the Ravens, Justice Hill. So that means
he was in my queue.
Andy Behrens is now on the clock once again.
I am reeling again from the loss of Justice Hill. I really like that pick. Exceptional spark score coming into the league, exceptional collegiate production. I think he's really got a chance. Of course, something would have to happen to Mark Ingram. I think Ingram's really solid, but if something happens there, I think Justice Hill has a chance to be great. That was going to be my guy. I have an embarrassing queue right now.
George Kittle's off the board.
Not available.
Yeah.
I know. I was stung on Kittel. Now I'm stung on Justice Hill. I am actually going to take a player that Scott just mocked. I'm going to take Adrian Peterson,
there we go.
who has a real chance to get a bunch of carries this year. Was obviously really productive last year. It is a trash fire of an offense, though, right? Like, if we're being honest, Trent Williams doesn't want to be there, which should be a worry for the running back position. But where I've drafted him, I'm not going to feel too bad about dropping him if I have to.
What's your read on the Adrian Peterson, Darius Guice situation? Because last year, obviously, Darius Guice got hurt after one great preseason performance. Then Adrian Peterson stepped in, and we know that the identity of the offense was to have neutral and positive game script and run the football with Adrian Peterson. That might not happen as frequently this year.
How many surgeries for Darius Guice? I think it was 5.
Yeah.
After the initial ACL, the infection, I think we had 5 surgeries there. I think it's obviously a real concern. There's almost no way that he enters the season as a full workload runner. So yeah, I think Adrian Peterson sees a bunch of rotational work.
After Andy selected AP, AD, Traquan Smith went off the board. The Los Angeles defense went off the board. I'll let you decide which one that is. And that means John Daigle's on the clock now.
When the Browns came out for that first preseason game, Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry weren't on the field, but they did have a starting wide receiver on the field because Antonio Callaway, who reported to training camp out of shape, has been working as the 6th wide receiver on their team, is now on the bench. And Rashad Higgins is...
suspended.
And suspended. Rashad Higgins is a starting receiver in what we expect to be one of the most explosive offenses in the league. So right now, I just consider it straight value and a great ceiling pick at this point of the draft to get him off the board.
I consider him one of the biggest risers over the past week, too.
Yep.
Higgins, somebody who was probably not getting drafted in July or early August, but is going to be a draft factor now.
And he has the college pedigree. Like, he was great at Colorado State.
Yeah. And it might even ramp up in these next 2 and 3 preseason games. And by the way, the best way to keep an updated info is the Rotoworld Draft Guide. Rankings, projections, strategy, and advice, and how to dominate your drafts. Check out the all-new Rotoworld NFL Draft Guide. It's now mobile optimized. I'll bring up my cell phone. With a new look and feel. It's never been easier to take our award-winning, especially Pat, advice with you to your drafts. For that extra competitive edge, just go to rotoworld.com/draft guide for more. Okay, Rashard Higgins went off the board. Kenny Stills went off the board. I mean, Pat, let me turn it to you on this one. Chris Herndon went off the board here. He's someone that if he wasn't missing, the first 2 weeks, 4 weeks.
I believe it's only 2. But...
Then it's someone that I think could be a real kind of blossom young prospect at the tight end position in an offense that I'm surprised by it, but talk so glowingly about the Jets.
I mean, from the date of his return, I'm going to double it. He is suspended for 4 games, so it's bad. So, but from week 5 forward, I mean, there's a real chance he's a tight end 1, maybe a top 10 tight end. So, if you can, you won't have to use your bench, hopefully, a ton those first 3 or 4 weeks, unless you get really bombed out with injury. I think the buys maybe start in week 4. So it's if you're going to take someone who's out for a quarter of the season, this is the time of the draft.
And let me give credit to Michael Epstein, because I think it's a nice little strategy here, because the round before he took Jordan Reed, who most likely will play those first 4 games. We don't know about that afterwards. So then you follow it up here with Chris Herndon as well. We're still waiting for Eugene and Alma to make their selection. I'm kind of out in all. We talked about Kenny Stills, who's up on the board behind me. I'm kind of out on all Miami Dolphins, and Deion Lewis just went on the board here with Eugene and Alma. Scott, you're up.
Yeah, I like Deion Lewis actually this late, because if you're going to draft a running back at this point, you want him to catch the ball.
Yep.
Henry's a little dinged up right now. Of course, they do different things. It's all about upside right now. I said I like the Falcons' offense. Freeman gets hurt a lot. I think Ito Smith stinks. Brian Hill is not going to get drafted in a lot. Brian Hill's not going to get drafted in a lot of leagues. Right now, he's probably a free agent in a lot of leagues. I'm just going to say, look, I'm taking a lottery ticket on an offense I believe in. I'm going to be behind a running back who may get hurt, who's had some injury concerns. They've upgraded the offensive line. I want Falcons. So I'll scratch the lottery. Give me a nickel, I'll scratch it. I know I'll probably lose on it and throw him away later, but Brian Hill, upside pick.
Scott, I kind of like this, though, because, again, if we reconvene in a week, 2 weeks after more of these preseason games, he might be up there in round 10 round 11 as someone that's not just a handcuff, but has some individual value as well.
You just want somebody with plausible upside and a simple story that makes sense, okay? With Hill, it's just, okay, Freeman got hurt, Needle Smith isn't good. Sounds good to me.
Simple enough.
Let's send over the guys over there in timeout. In the corner, Matt Straub and Chris Sims.
It might be a simpler story than we think in Washington with Adrian Peterson. Okay, terrible offense. Yes, he's 34, but he just had a 1,200-yard, 8-touchdown season. Are you going to bet against that happening again?
I'm not going to bet. Well, I'm not sure that will happen again, but I don't think it'll be crazy to think that he gets something similar. I mean, there's just not a lot of proven commodities within the Redskins offense, especially in the backfield. Hey, I love Chris Thompson. He's been a walking injury the last few years. Yeah, Darius Geis, we don't know where that is. The quarterback-receiver situation's dicey. But I think as far as round 13 goes, Adrian Peterson's pretty good. And I think you've already heard Jay Gruden trust him to carry kind of the bulk of that offense when it comes to rushing the ball.
We've talked quite a bit about the Browns' pass game. How does Rashad Higgins finish that for you?
Another one. I don't like John that much, but I like a lot of his picks for some reason. But Rashard is, like I said, I was out there last week. Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry. If one of them gets banged up one week, can't play, whatever it may be, Rashard Higgins is that guy that's going to be the third receiver or benefit from them being out of the lineup for a week or whatever it may be.
And by the way, Josh, we are kind of in timeout over here, and we don't even have chairs. We've been standing.
Yeah, standing for just, it's all right.
Don't lock them out. Don't want
Buns
any
of
collapses
steel
over there,
here.
fainting. No, you guys are good?
We're good.
All right, round 14 just kicked off. Scott, we're going to turn it back over to you. A defense here with the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, I like defenses to play in a soccer stadium, so I got that box checked. The question is, when you draft in where we have second week of August, do you even draft a defense or kicker at all? A lot of people will pick an extra lottery pick. I'm not going to take a kicker.
Yeah. What are we looking for when we draft defenses? Is it just sacks and turnovers?
That, but I like the Chargers have impact players on all three levels, and they're a legitimate playoff and Super Bowl contender. Your defense has to be about how good is the team, even how good is the offense. You want them to be in favorable game script late. They can pin back the ears, rush the quarterback. They have Pro Bowl candidates all over this defense. I think they're going to be the #1 defense this season.
But something that gets overlooked so much in defenses, this is why like the New England Patriots are always a good fantasy defense. Teams late have to throw against the New England Patriots. It increases sack opportunities, increases interception opportunities. So you don't want like a flag football defense, like a team that's in guaranteed shootouts.
Yeah.
But you want a team that scores points on offense. And if you don't get an elite defensive defense, get a defense that teams are going to have to throw the ball against.
And when you're in a streaming position week to week, make sure you get a favorite team.
Yes.
You pick on the weakest opponent you can.
And it's rare that you're going to keep, if at all, the same defense for the entire 16 weeks. Like you play matchups.
Absolutely.
You play favorites, home favorites, expected point totals.
Scott, by the way, the Chargers are playing the Colts week 1. So
Well, without Andrew, with probably the backup Jacoby Brissett in there, I think
so that
it's a
would
good
be-
matchup for the Chargers.
that would be great.
John Daigle's on the clock, but I do want to mention that Michael Epstein here took Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon is one of my. This is one of your picks, John.
That's who I was going to go this round. Yeah.
Why?
It's a high ceiling swing for the fence right now. We have 3 weeks. Like, we're drafting 3 weeks out of the regular season. 3 weeks for Josh Gordon to get cleared, and he steps in, and he's unquestionably the #1 wide receiver. Like, Julian Edelman is safe for loads of targets, especially because the Patriots are top 10 in available production from last season, targets-wise. But Josh Gordon is that deep threat. Like, that's your end zone guy. That's the guy you want to draft. So if you're drafting like this weekend, Josh Gordon is still a great pick in the league.
And if we can read into the tea leaves and the stories here a little bit, N'Keal Harry was wearing number 10.
Yep.
Right before the game, they take it away from him, give him number 8 because Josh Gordon wore number 10 last year. And we saw all the Instagram posts, all the social media posts of Josh Gordon working out with Tom Brady during the offseason. That kind of makes me think Josh Gordon's coming back this year.
This passing game has a great slot guy in Edelman, a great satellite back in James White. What it needs is an outside receiver, somebody who can win as an X. Josh Gordon would be the #1 target on this team the moment he shows up.
We spent a lot of time on Michael Epstein's pick. We didn't even get to John Daigle's pick, who you just took.
But I didn't want to get auto-drafted again, so I made my selection. No, I mean, it's simply put, it's Albert Wilson. He's been one of my favorite late-round targets this offseason. He has clear-cut duties in the slot where Ryan Fitzpatrick prefers to throw, has a high efficiency towards his slot receiver. That's all it is. If Albert Wilson, he is injured, he's not practicing right now. If he's not ready for week 1, Kenny Stills is that cheat code because Kenny Stills at OTAs was a full-time slot receiver, and that basically also puts our boy Preston Williams on the outside with Devontae Parker. But Albert Wilson in the slot, that's my guy late round.
Ryan Fitzpatrick is not necessarily a great NFL quarterback. He could be a fun fantasy quarterback. Tampa Bay for about 4 or 5 weeks last year with Fitzpatrick was really fun for fantasy. He's going to lock in on somebody. Who's to say it can't be Albert Wilson?
And we talked about it earlier with DJ Moore leading the league in yards after catch. Albert Wilson was second, although
Wilson's
a shorter
a yak
Wilson.
machine.
He is. Okay, now we turn it over to Andy Behrens after Zay Jones went off the board. Jerick McKinnon went off the board.
I may not have to make this pick quite this early. I'm going to draft the Cleveland Browns defense, and I'm not necessarily committing to keeping them the entire season. They do open the year with Tennessee, though. I like that. So the first two games, right out of the gate, it's Tennessee, it's the Jets. I'm going to start them in at least both of those weeks. I feel pretty good about that.
I mean, how can you not feel good about Myles Garrett, about Olivier Vernon, about Larry Ogunjobi, about players at the second level, players at the third level? The only question is are the Browns going to completely exceed expectations or even match expectations than they previously had before, Andy?
Yeah, this is a bunch of fun names, right? Like, the defense is pretty loaded. Ward, you mentioned Garrett. This is a stacked defense. And again, as Pat mentioned, I believe with the Chargers, right, like, this team could race out to some big leads, and then that sets them up for takeaways, right? So I think there's a great opportunity here to pile up takeaways, maybe some defensive touchdowns. But really, this is just about the opening weeks of the season where I think their matchups are great.
Andy, why take them here rather than wait to one of the round 15 or 16, just because you really wanted to exit with a team and a defense that you felt super confident about?
Yeah, they could have come around in the next round. They probably would have been there, right? There's a handful of other defenses that I think probably grade out a little bit better. Mostly, it's that I just wanted to talk about the fact that they have these great early season matchups, and it's a thing to think about in fantasy drafts.
All right, let's keep it going. Roto Pat is up after the Vikings defense goes, Harrison Butker, the kicker for the Chiefs, goes, and Paris Campbell, who, if I think was healthy, would have been taken a few rounds before this. But Pat, close us out here in round 14.
I really need a running back. I only have 4 running backs, but instead of forcing the issue with a running back I don't like, I'll just wait on running back to kind of unfold more over training camp, hopefully add someone off the waiver wire. This is someone I'm almost certainly going to drop because we all, talked about Vance McDonald for 15 minutes after I drafted him earlier. But I'm going to draft Trey Burton, who was like a top 8 to 10 tight end last year.
Did Andy laugh at you?
Yeah, I did.
Did you hear that?
I did. And Trey Burton could easily, Trey Burton probably had his floor season in Matt Nagy's offense last year. He's got room for improvement, have not added much target competition. And Trey Burton, though, is, again, probably someone I'm just to be dropping. But this is almost just like a hedge. It's not a hedge against Vance's greatness. I'm just taking someone who I think.
Just taking value.
Yeah, I'm just taking value.
Just a couple rounds left. That means just a couple times that Matt and Chris get to pick on us.
Well, this late in the draft, we're all looking for excitement. I think it's worth noting that we did just see a guy go off the board who can legitimately levitate in Zay Jones. I mean, that's exciting.
Well, I feel like the Bills are being disrespected altogether. First off, I want you guys pick the Bills defense. This is the number 2 defense in football last year. They're going to have more of an offense to support. Other thing I'll just throw out there, and I know you guys know a whole lot more about fantasy, and I'm not saying I know more about football. I'm impressed with everything you guys say. Cole Beasley. Somebody out there, take him. This is the New England offense they're running up there. He is going to be their Julian Edelman. So I'll just throw that out there just for some food for thought. And then,
meanwhile, Twitch viewer Philly Unite, who's following along with us, says Josh Allen was a surprise in fantasy. He wants to know, you think he'll continue that magic this season? He's still on the board.
I love Josh Allen. I really do. I think the big question there, hey, we talk about accuracy and efficiency. I think all that will improve. The running aspect, I'm sure, brought a ton of points to Josh Allen last year. I don't know if he'll be running as aggressively as he was last year, but still dangerous that way. I understand why he's not here, but come on. Bills defense, Cole Beasley, get it done. Let's go.
I don't know if we've ever had a blurb on Rotoworld written about an event that happened on the Rotoworld live draft show, but Chris Sims saying that Cole Beasley is going to be the Julian Edelman in the Bills offense might be worthy of one. Just my thoughts. Pat,
source it.
Start off the round 15 with us.
I took the Eagles defense. I was just looking at week 1 matchups, basically. I was deciding between the Eagles at home versus the Redskins or the Seahawks at home versus the Bengals. And I was very tempted to go Seattle. Talk about some place where Andy Dalton probably could play 100 games and never have a good game would be in Seattle. But the Seattle defensive line, very decimated right now. I'll just go. We said earlier, the Redskins probably have the least overall fantasy value of any offense. I'll go the Eagles at home.
Great hack there, right? You're going to pick your defense. Look at the week 1 schedule. Look at the early season schedule. If you're going to do it that way, I think it's a fantastic strategy.
Especially with players that can rush the passer like we just talked about. Right after you, though, Pat, Jameis Winston off the board. Like, there were periods of this offseason where Jameis Winston, I saw, was listed as a top 10 quarterback.
I think he'll boomerang back around that way, too, especially maybe after
it goes round 15 here in a quote-unquote expert draft.
Yeah, because
if we all like Evans, if we all like Godwin, if we all like Howard, how can we not to some degree
all like Bruce Arians.
like Winston? We all like Arians.
In drafts that I don't wait to get auto-drafted for Andrew Luck, I typically target Jameis Winston and Lamar Jackson.
Also, who just went was Malcolm Brown, who I think is the legit handcuff, if you want to put it that way, and maybe shares that 35% of touches with the LA Rams.
I thought long and hard about taking him.
And I need to point out that Ryan Lavender at pick 4 here was listening over to Chris Sims in the side set. Cole Beasley moving the needle already in the fantasy football world, Chris Sims.
I like that Ryan Lavender guy. He's coachable.
He might need a co-owner. Maybe Sims Lavender 2019.
There we go. Andy Behrens, you're up with the 5th pick here in round 15.
Yeah, I want to echo a point that Scott made about Jameis Winston. If we're right about Godwin and we're right about Evans and we're right about Howard, then for sure Jameis is going to have a great fantasy season, surely a top 12 fantasy season. I'm going to take Mike Davis here because you guys hated my David Montgomery pick. Now I will receive your celebratory congratulations after taking the great Mike Davis.
We have the champagne is once we're off camera is when it's going to be popped.
But Andy, it does make sense.
I got to
though.
size that belt.
It does make sense though because this was the player that we thought would kind of be the real running back with Tariq Cohen and going to have his role no matter what. With Mike Davis and getting a legit contract in free agency, and then obviously they trade up for David Montgomery. But we don't, again, right now know how the touches are going to unfold in this backfield. And it kind of is a David Montgomery versus Mike Davis situation here.
Just based on the local excitement about David Montgomery and everything that has come out from camp, everything from the offseason program, I would just be shocked if David Montgomery is not a 250 touchback this year if he stays healthy. That said, I think Mike Davis is good. I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's a fine backup. He's basically a handcuff here. But of course, your handcuff is the guy that you generally drop after week 1. So on the off chance that Mike Davis is a thing, I've got him. And then when he's not in week 1, I'm cutting him loose.
Scott Davies selected Seattle's defense right after Andy. Then Kyle Smith follows that up with Kymie Fairbairn of the Houston Texans. John Daigle, you're on the clock with 30 seconds to go, I might remind you.
Oh, don't worry. I know. Straight upside here. They've talked about already giving him a role no matter what. But if David Johnson goes down, Chase Edmonds is literally a week winner. At this point, I genuinely think he should have been drafted earlier.
They're claiming he could have a pass-catching role just even if with David Johnson in the lineup.
Even like they can work together is what they're saying. But either way, Chase Edmonds is literally a league winner if David Johnson goes down.
And the point is that if the Cardinals are, if we buy the hype that they might run the most plays in the NFL this year or top 3 or top 4
in NFL history,
there still might be 20 snaps a game.
Oh, absolutely.
For Chase Edmonds. And it's absolutely possible and feasible that he not going to have an individual role, but he's still going to see game time each and every week.
He should be drafted as standalone value. Not that you're starting him every week, but as a standalone player in every single draft.
It's a great distinction, right? Is if you get a lottery ticket who you think might actually be worth something, even if he doesn't get everything popping his way.
And not to jump ahead here, but rather than take a kicker or a defense, which you are doing in round 15 or 16, taking those handcuffs, especially this early on, John Daigle, with a couple weeks left, who knows what happens to David Johnson. And right now, like you just mentioned, if he does go down, we definitely don't want him to, but if he does, Chase Edmonds steps in as maybe your running back 1, because Ezekiel hasn't hit the field.
It's a genuine draft strategy, especially this long out from the season, to just take flyers that have direct pass to opportunity if someone ahead of them goes down. So that's what I'm doing. I'm skipping kicker and defense. I'll probably take a defense, but.
After Daigle selected Chase Edmonds, Ted Ginn went off the board. We had Traquan Smith just a few rounds earlier than that. Wouldn't be surprised if Michael Thomas really mans the slot the most for the Saints this season in 3 wide receiver sets. Preston Williams, the undrafted rookie from Colorado State, who was fantastic in week 1 of the preseason, goes off the board. Buffalo Bills defense, and that means Scott Pianowski up his final 2 picks. Let's start with the first one, though, here in round 15.
Sure, just what John said. I mean, we're looking for high upside, right? We're looking for something, a lottery ticket type of guy. Alexander Mattison in Minnesota, clear number 2. Dalvin Cook's had injury concerns. We know this team wanted to get unplugged and go back to 70s football. I don't want Cook to get hurt. I want Cook to have a great season. If he doesn't, Alexander Mattison becomes a weekly starter.
I'm stunned he hasn't gone off the board earlier than this because I go back because I'm a psycho, and I go back and watch every single post-draft press conference from every single team. And Mike Zimmer stood up there, Spielman sat up there and said, hey, we view Alexander Mattison like Latavius Murray. And Latavius Murray was one of the best goal-to-go runners in the league the past few years. He had an individual role. Alexander Madison could have the same thing.
Right, and we don't know that Cook can play 4 months a season. I mean, it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. That's it of the side desk. Not the last time. I wish it was. But we Strap and Chris Sims.
We do need, I think we need like a breaking news ticker or some kind of banner up, because I'm looking at the live standings. The current relegation candidate among the experts is Patrick Doherty.
Oh!
Sorry, Patrick. Live standings project
I will say,
11th place.
despite Yahoo's great services, their preseason projections, both in football and baseball,
based on last year's stats,
they punish my upside.
There goes your check.
They punish my upside drafting, and I would like someone at Yahoo to review this.
What were your thoughts on the Winston pick quickly?
The guys really echoed, I think, all the proper points. I mean, desperation's a real thing. This is a desperate year for Jameis Winston. For Bruce Arians, the one thing, he's the quarterback whisperer. They do have talent around him, a decent O-line. Peyton Barber, I do think, is a pretty damn good running back to go along with it. I don't know if it's going to translate to wins, but I think big stats out of Jameis Winston this year. I mean, he could be possibly the league leader in passing yards and right up there in the touchdown department, too.
Scott Pianowski kicks off our final round of this live draft with the third Chiefs running back and already preseason star in Darwin Thompson.
Yeah, a little bit of preseason buzz there. Again, just looking at an Andy Reid offense, if something were to happen to Williams, and we don't even know who really Williams is right now. So I'm just looking to swing for the fences. This could be one of my first cuts. Let's see what happens the next 3 weeks.
And a lot of people look to Hyde for that role, but Hyde has proven to not be an efficient pass catcher. Like, Darwin Thompson will have a role if Damian Williams goes down, and perhaps even if Damian Williams doesn't get injured.
A lot of times there's more upside from the unknown player than there is from the known player.
I was going to say something about Carlos Hyde, where he has not been efficient as a pass catcher, but he has been a pass catcher.
Sure.
So he could still catch passes.
He also went as the third pick in the 11th round, so it's about a 5-round difference.
And I was also going to say, the experts, we are currently projected for 8th through 11th. I'm now down to 12th, actually.
So no belt or trophy from TrophySmack.com.
So I think we've already formed like our own second division, basically.
John Daigle, you have 40 seconds left with the final pick of the draft.
I'm again going with the flyer, foregoing defense and kicker. I'll pick them up since we're apparently playing this thing out before week 1. And I am drafting someone who has gotten all the camp buzz, someone who is apparently having a role from week 1 no matter what happens in front of him, and that is Ty Montgomery.
Which is fascinating to me because, I mean, one, Le'Veon Bell, we expect him to be on the field for, based on that contract, 85, 90% of the snaps. If Le'Veon Bell goes down, Ty Montgomery obviously was used quite a bit in that first preseason game and looked very good as a receiving back, which is a major skill set of Le'Veon Bell's.
Because he was a receiver at
he
one
was.
point, right? I mean,
that's Stanford.
Yahoo was forced to change his position.
Where's 88?
Season a couple of years ago, right? You love those running backs more in the odd numbers. I think that's a great pick in round 16. All about plausible upside. Who's to say what Bell is ready to do after a year off? This is what this round should be. Don't pick that defense or kicker. Take somebody who has a path to significant value.
Andy Behrens is on the clock. Andy, did Junior snipe you by selecting Devontae Parker in round 16?
No, certainly not. I do want to add about Ty Montgomery and Chris Herndon, who went earlier. Charles Robinson, the fantastic Yahoo writer, spent some time at Jets camp earlier last week, and he came away raving about the way they were going to use Montgomery and Herndon. Loved them both. So, again, it's the Jets offense. Maybe we don't feel that excited about it, but there is a big opportunity there. And if you can wait out those first 4 weeks with Herndon, I think that's a good call. I'm going to draft, I'm going to draft Dak Prescott here because I'm appalled that he hasn't been taken yet. Dak has never finished outside the top 12 fantasy quarterbacks. He's finished as high as 6. I don't need him. This could very well be a situation where I drop him later on for a kicker, but he is someone that I want gamers to keep in mind late in drafts. This is a guy you can get in the final round. Again, he's never failed us in fantasy. 6 rushing touchdowns every season of his career. I think just a great sleeper at the position.
But Andy, let me put you on the spot here because you selected Drew Brees in round 10. It's in the realm of possibility that Dak Prescott finishes the season higher than Drew Brees in the final standings.
It's possible. I think they both have a pretty clear path to finish top 10, top 12. Yeah. I disagree with the thought that Drew Brees is suddenly nothing better than like QB8, QB9. I mean, I think the upside for Drew Brees is still that he throws 36, 38 touchdown passes, has a great season. This is really me taking Dak this late because I want people to keep his name in mind as a final round quarterback.
I don't like Andy at all. But I will say that Dak was the QB6 last year from the time they acquired Amari Cooper on. Like Dak, especially the Cowboys have one of the easiest first-month schedules. Dak's ceiling is so high this year. He's such a good late-round quarterback.
He has bankable rushing touchdowns that you don't have to pay for.
Pat, time for the last pick. I mean, we had our token Rex Burkhead selection in a Rotoworld draft. Thank you for that. Mecole Hardman off the board. Will Lutz went off the board. Pat, send us home.
Mr. Irrelevant. I would say all of Pat's.
I was gonna take Devontae Parker. Mr. YOLO himself, Ryan Fitzpatrick. The Dolphins somewhat inexplicably re-signed Devontae Parker. Did flash a little bit last year. I kind of liked maybe that potential connection with Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I'm going to make a very unexciting pick, and I'm just going to go Jalen Richard. Maybe hedge against Josh Jacobs this summer. There's a guy who, like we said, had the co-lead in team receptions last year at 68. Maybe Josh Jacobs won't be ready to play all 3 downs. So it's a PPR league. I'll just roll. I will be dropping Jalen Richard, let's be honest.
I am hoping that the Raiders don't throw to Jalen Richard as much. So is Antonio Brown. So is Josh Jacobs. So is everyone else.
The Western Hemisphere.
For one last time, send it over to Matt Strauff and Chris Sims. Be kind this time, please.
Just a quick by the numbers for you guys. We had 2 auto drafts by experts, Pianowski and Daigle. I counted 4 minor dust-ups between Behrens and Doherty. Let's get these 2 in the same room next year, please.
And let's have them fight for the belt.
Yeah,
I think that's fair.
Right.
I like that.
What are your final thoughts on this experience we just had?
This is really cool. I've never done fantasy football, as you guys might have guessed by now. I'm so impressed with all of your knowledge and just really the logic you guys used in picking some of these guys. It was interesting for me, nonetheless. I did like Matt Martin's last round pick of Mecole Hardman. Like you guys talked about taking a shot with like guys who might be something this year. He jumped out to me. Let me ask you guys this, okay? Yeah. And again, I'm a newbie. Greg Olsen,
I know.
TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant. There's just 3 guys that I thought might we hear late in these last 2 rounds just because they're not only talented, but they're in offenses that value the tight end. I'd love to just hear you guys talk about that.
I love the point on Noah Fant because if we know anything about Joe Flacco, he loves to throw those tight ends.
Right.
I mean, look about heading into last year with the Ravens. They selected 2.
Yes.
It was Hayden Hurst and it was Mark Andrews.
Right.
There is basically no one on the Broncos at the tight end position that can catch at tight end, and Noah Fant we know is an uber athlete that could really. And it's tough for a rookie tight end to break out, but he has the potential to do it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I was curious there because, yeah, also what we talked about, Rich Scangarello being there, George Kittel, who had the success in the Shanahan offense. I think he'll be featured very similar way. So great experience, guys. I really enjoyed it. Next year, I really think I might want to pick my own team. I don't know if I really want to do that, but it seems fun, I think. But I get annoyed because all my friends text me on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And I actually don't like fantasy football sometimes because I'm like, leave me alone. Stop asking me for who to play. So
we'll give them cool, Pat's number afterwards.
All right, cool.
When Andy gets relegated, we'll slide in Chris next year.
There we go.
Okay.
Hey, thanks so much, guys. Chris and Matt.
Thank you, guys.
So
Appreciate it.
Now it's time to take a look at everyone, the 4 people at this desk plus Behrens, their teams. Let's start off with Pat's team. Pat, how do you feel? That's the question I wanted to ask you every single day. Are you happy?
I am. I got a lot of my guys. I've owned a ton of Kyler Murray this summer, a ton of Aaron Jones, a ton of Vance McDonald, a lot of Mark Ingram. Very happy with Mark Ingram as my 3rd running back. I like to generally go upside. I mean, I'm sure we all like to go upside, but I have a lot of upside. That's why I was lower in the projected standings. I'm very happy with my team, and which is great because we're actually playing it out. So
yeah, I will say you have 3 kind of high upside wide receivers: Robbie Anderson, Will Fuller, Michael Gallup.
Receiver is the trouble spot for my team. I have 3 potentially elite running backs, but receiver is the trouble spot for my team, which generally you do not want to be your weakness in a PPR league.
Let's turn to Andy Behrens. Andy Behrens, I know you're not here with us in the room, but from where you are located, how does your team look?
Well, I feel pretty good about my roster of running backs, right? I've got some depth there. Obviously, I have an elite wide receiver and a couple of upside guys that I feel great about. I feel good about the quarterback position with Brees. I wanna just reinforce something that Chris had said about the 2 Iowa tight ends. Had this not been a scenario where I really wanted to talk about Dak with that last pick, I probably would have taken Noah Fant there. I think he has it's rare that a rookie tight end has a clear path to a significant target total. I think Fant is probably that guy. He can block well enough to stay on the field. I also think Hawkinson is going to be a great option. I don't know that it happens early in the season in Detroit, but I think by the end of the season, you're going to see Hawkinson used a lot.
Already looking ahead to that Mike Davis drop. Noah Fant pickup in the next week for Andy Behrens. Let's turn to now John Daigle's team. We know he started off with Zeke, George Kittle, Leonard Fournette. Daigle, take us through.
Yeah, I'm actually quite happy with mine. More or less, I grabbed my guys in the later rounds that I truly enjoy, like Chase Edmonds, Tony Pollard. Like those are guys I've been drafting. Darwin Thompson I missed out on, but that was one of my targets as well. Those are guys like I have high exposures to in best ball as well. So it's genuinely my strategy. So I'm happy with it. Andrew Luck, had he not been auto-drafted, I would have gone Jameis Winston probably in the 12th or 13th. Him and Lamar Jackson are two of my favorite quarterbacks this year. As we know, like Bruce Arians, 2017, his last year to coach for the Cardinals, league average to run 4 wide receiver sets was 5%. Bruce Arians did it over 40% of the time. Like Jameis Winston is a favorite to tick all the boxes. I say this and I didn't draft him because the auto draft, but tick all the boxes in leading the league in interceptions, leading the league in passing touchdowns, leading the league in passing yards, MVP he can literally do it all this year. So especially in the late rounds, I wish I would have waited. I wish I would have paid attention and not gotten auto drafted, but life comes at you fast.
Scott Pianowski, it can be difficult to round out and be on the turn of a draft. How's your team look?
I'll be honest, a lot of times I don't like picking from the 12th slot, but I think this went really well. I got 2 running backs I like, and then it freed me up to go anywhere I wanted to. And look at the offenses I invested in. Browns offense, Steelers offense, Rams offense. We're all excited about Tampa Bay's offense, Chargers offense, Latavius Murray on the Saints. Those teams are going to score points. It's the simplest Occam's razor thing. Go where the points are. I got talented players on teams that are going to score. A lot of times I picked in tandem, 2 running backs at a time, 2 receivers at a time. I thought I got really good running back lottery tickets. I expect to contend with this team.
Cool. Guys, thanks so much. I appreciate it. And again, let me point out that for around the clock, NFL news, rumors, injury reports, depth chart changes, analysis, and more, go to rotoworld.com/NFL. I want to thank Chris Sims, Matt Straub over there, our own Statler and Waldorf, if you get that reference.
I don't.
Appreciate you.
I played football. I'm not that smart.
We are the Muppet Show.
There we go. Scott Pianowski, John Daigle, Patrick Doherty. I'm Josh Norris. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Good luck drafting. Enjoy the rest of the preseason. We'll talk to y'all soon. See ya.